Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spartan Theology. This is a bit of a impromptu stream, just kind of celebrating 250 subscribers. So thanks to everybody who is subscribed and who will subscribe in the future. I appreciate it. It's really cool. And yeah, we're just kind of doing an open stream, talking about whatever. I really don't know where we're going to go. I'm sure we'll have some topics to bring up. But yeah. I got John and JB in here now. I think Ronald or Ron, whatever he goes by, is going to hop in. I shot him the link. And yeah, so who knows who will stop by. If anybody wants to join, just leave a message in the chat. I'll get you the Zoom link. Anybody can join. We have room for a bunch of people. So yeah. I appreciate everybody coming by. And you don't really know how to get this started exactly, but maybe John and JB can say a little something, or we'll just, I appreciate you guys being here. I don't know exactly where we want to go. Normally I have like a topic. Now I'm realizing that I always have something to go into, and I'm like drawing a blank. But yeah.
Best Christmas movie. Why don't we start with something easy?
Okay. Yeah, best Christmas movie. There you go. Definitely not Die Hard. I'm not a Die Hard Christmas movie guy.
I mean, there's a debate about whether that's
exactly.
a Christmas movie too. Yeah.
I actually told somebody the other day on YouTube, they were talking about Die Hard being a Christmas movie. I said, to me, it has to do more than just take place at Christmas to be classified as a Christmas movie. Otherwise, Gremlins is a Christmas movie, and The Karate Kid is a Halloween movie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, Harry Potter could be a Christmas movie. There's always Christmas in that too.
Yeah.
So
if that's the only criteria.
I was just trying to find something lighthearted to kind of.
No, I know.
get some
I'll give mine.
going.
I think that The Muppet Christmas Carol is my favorite Christmas movie. I think that's actually a really incredible interpretation of Dickens and kind of modernization of Dickens' story. And it's got some great songs, and like people who are into kind of musical stuff, it's got all of that. I think it's got some really dramatic and sort of tense moments. It's a kids movie, right? But I think it's even tense for adults, especially as you get to the Ghost of Christmas Future. You get scary, sort of like almost Scream mask on, right? With the hood and all of that. But I don't think I've gone to Christmas since I was young without seeing that. So I would go with Muppet Christmas Carol. That's mine.
Good choice. I might say, I don't know. I mean, I want to say Elf because that is a really good one, but that's kind of, I don't know.
It's this generation's Christmas story.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm not the biggest fan of Christmas Story, and that's probably just because my mom is like obsessed, and we'll watch it like 3 or 4 times every year. I just can't do it.
And TBS runs it for 24 hours.
I'm more of yeah, they do. I'm more of I'm a simple guy when it comes to Christmas movies. Elf is probably my number one with National.
Oh, you froze up, but I think you were saying National Lampoon Christmas Vacation. Yeah. I actually just saw that for the first time like last year.
I think I saw it for the first time 2 or 3 years ago, because that wasn't like a Christmas movie that I watched growing up at all. Usually it is for families, right? It's part of what they watch, but it's funny. Chevy Chase is obviously comedic genius, but yeah,
my mom is like hates any movie that like where there's like people like chaos and mess and stuff. So she like didn't let us it's not like she wouldn't let us watch it, but we just never would put it on any movie like that.
She liked The Christmas Story?
Yeah, but she really like hates the part, like literally will like turn it off the part where like the dogs come in and eat the turkey or whatever.
Really?
Hey, Spartan.
Yeah.
Send Craig Reed
Oh, is he trying to get in? I see him in the chat.
I don't know. Yeah, he's in the chat.
I'll shoot him.
See if he runs from me like he does all the time.
Yeah. He said he's like, ooh, JB versus John. This is gonna be epic.
Hey, Craig, we did an hour and a half of that the other day.
Well, I shot him the Zoom link. Yeah, so what is going on? Jeez.
I appear to have
Universalist
some
Heretic. Nice. I was like, did someone new join? You're on mute, John. I don't know. I think you meant to be, but yeah, I was like, who's someone new? The Universalist Heretic.
I killed my video because I seem to be having some internet lag, so we're
That's
gonna hope
fine.
that killing the video
Oh, good.
sorts it out.
Yeah. Maybe I'll be fancy and turn it to. Whoops. Oh, I lost it. Oh my gosh. We're doing it live, folks.
We'll do it live.
Yeah, it went black when I turned it to speaker mode on accident. I'm trying to turn it to where it like doesn't show JV's just random black screen.
Yeah, where it just shows the person talking. At one
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
and I like
Yeah.
that too because it looks like it always seems on Craig's stream that he's like some like disembodied figure or whatever, you know, like talking.
He is
from-
though. He is a
Yeah.
disembodied figure talking from
I actually saw.
who knows where.
Yeah, I saw Craig for the first. I didn't realize that he actually had his camera on when he did his stream with Pine Creek, like
Yeah, he's a
forever
person.
ago. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I didn't know what he looked like until like only like a month ago.
Uncle Craig.
Kind of took away the mystery though. It was like seeing behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz.
He's like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. Yeah. That's right. So I don't know.
yeah,
Oh,
whoops.
yeah, I think we're on speaker view now.
Yeah, now I'm on Spotlight Video or whatever.
Oh,
I don't want
We're just
that
gonna look
either.
at Ethan the whole time.
Oh, I just canceled myself. Oh my gosh. Now we're just on John texting.
good. This is the most
Hide
exciting
non-video participants. There we go. We're getting close. We're getting close.
I mean, I
why-
can do whatever on my end because I don't have a camera.
Well, no, it just popped up. Just a full black screen. Oh my gosh, I'm really. And now whenever JP talks, we only get a black screen, so I only made it worse. But
Awesome.
yeah. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. I did it.
Oh, Pine Creek Doug is live right now. Hence the reason you probably won't. I sent him a thing because I know John likes him so much.
Yeah, they're
He's
best
my
buds.
best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me and John have a thing where every time we refer to him, it has to be a different, like Pine something.
Pine word. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a different D name.
Yep.
So like Pine Grove
We've gone through
Dan.
Pine Grove Dan. I
You're
think
being mean to
Pine.
my guy.
I think Pinecone is the best first name. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna
Doug and I
talk
have an
about.
interesting history.
Yeah.
since I've been on that.
I want to say you got your internet fame whenever you went on his channel, didn't you, John? I said you guys started your internet fame once you went on Doug's channel right after Laura did.
In some
right?
ways, yeah. So it was. So Hayden at. I guess it's no longer Help Me Believe. It's the Hayden Clark Show. Is that what it is now?
I think so, but he changed the name. He probably should have changed his name when he was gonna like do something. Would have made.
Yeah,
a
and then he
little
just didn't do
more
anything.
sense.
Yeah. He just kept dropping out. Yeah. Which is understandable. He has a kid, so.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, you might as well wait to
Uh,
announce a name change when you're gonna
sure.
make so people actually remember.
Yeah. But and he had Laura on after the whole what's his name? Blanking on
Lee
his name.
Strobel.
Lee Strobel podcast that Laura and Ian put out, sort of critiquing his book. There were a lot of sort of misunderstandings of that and people kind of attacking that, mostly from sort of the apologetic crowd. And so Hayden had Laura on to kind of talk about that a bit further. And then from there, Pine Creek saw that and then had Laura on his channel. And eventually I came on his channel and then started doing more interviews. And then, and then eventually we started our own show. But I think it's Hayden's fault, actually, that we're involved in this world. So,
Yeah, I blame Hayden. If it wasn't for Hayden, I wouldn't know who you are, probably. So
Yep.
take that as.
Yeah, I
it
watched
is.
I watched you and I think it was you and Hayden do a Universalist discussion, and it was just it was good. But you and him, I think you and him kind of went more of just speaking where it's at biblically, as opposed to
exactly.
like kind of where you and I went with the different approach
Yeah.
of actually like where it leads in society,
Sure.
kind of thing.
Yes, right. Yeah, because we actually literally walked through certain texts together.
Yeah.
We I think we came with a couple of texts from the Universalist side, and then kind of the Annihilationist side, which is where Hayden comes from. He's not persuaded by the Universalist argument. I think I have better reasons now for accepting it textually than I did then, but so I kind of wish I could do it over again.
We got that stream planned with Josh Rasmussen. That'll be really cool.
That's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'll tell you what, man. It's even as a non-believer, like I like people like even you and Hayden. And part of the conversation I couldn't keep up with because y'all didn't dive into what the text was. You would just spout like a book, chapter, and verse, and before anybody could get into what it was, you already launched like a whole long conversation.
Yeah.
Hello, Ron, or Ronald. I'm not exactly sure what you go by, so I'm going to keep saying that until you correct me. So, hello, Ron or Ronald.
Depots.
Yeah.
Ron's fine.
Okay. Well, hello, Ron. Thank you for joining. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're off in the ether over there, but you're here.
Well, we need one more disembodied mind, and we've got the Trinity over here.
That's right.
Not quite sure that's how it works. Could be wrong, though.
Well, we need Craig. Craig's got to come in.
Yeah, Craig said he was going to join in a few minutes.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually reading. I don't know if you saw, John. I sent you that paper. I don't know if you saw your email.
By Stephen Nemish. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading through it. He has a really interesting. I only read like the first bit, but he has a really interesting article or like argument for universalism. It's like basically says that, like in the Old Testament, where God is like anthropomorphized and like uses threats like Nineveh, he's gonna destroy Nineveh or whatever. Even though like like according to classical theism, like he clearly didn't change his mind.
Right.
Like it was more of like a means to an end.
Yeah.
And uses that as like a way to explain the threats of hell, essentially, as like a means to an end, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if you've heard other people argue that same way, but
yeah, Laura's actually done something like that in her work on. She did a paper on Matthew for the Rethinking Hell conference that was kind of referencing that OT story intertextually with Matthew. And yeah, it comes to a similar sort of conclusion for Matthew, even though some of Matthew's texts are still pretty hard to kind of deal with on that level. But
it's just kind of cool because you can kind of take it literally as like eternal conscious torment, essentially, like, and still be a universalist. Because like, yeah, it's just the fact that like no one's actually going to end up there.
Right.
You still have to have like some.
That's
sort
a way
of, like,
to go about it.
Yeah, you still have to have some sort of like post-mortem
sure.
sort of thing or whatever. But
yeah, that's the way to do it. I would actually, I hear that kind of approach, and I think it's helpful. I would actually question the Greek terminology of aeons or aionios, which we usually translate as eternal, even though there's Greek parallels that talk about it in terms of age or ages.
I just sent you the link on Facebook, JMD. But yeah, just cutting in. He said link.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's just there's just different ways. I mean, obviously, they're like you can take your interpretation or translation of aionios or whatever. But like, obviously, there is a debate. You know what I mean? You can't just like...
Absolutely, yeah. And I definitely wouldn't want to build my Universalist house on top of a rereading of Aeon or Aionios or anything like... Or any specific Greek word. I think that's fallacious. So...
For sure. What do you think, JB? What do you think about universalism? What's your opinion? Or what about you, Ron? Yeah, I don't know.
It's the best way to go as far as Christianity goes. And I think John and I had a very good discussion about it yesterday.
For sure.
I think there's definitely some passages that require contention with it regarding universalism. I think there's definitely some passages that point that way, and I'm not convinced of universalism. I don't think it's in the Bible, but I'm a hopeful universalist.
Yeah, that's really what the paper too I was referring to. That's his whole thing, was like how to confidently pray for the salvation of all, essentially. So like just giving you a reasonable argument that it could be possible is at least enough to where we can confidently pray that hopefully everyone is saved, which is pretty cool. I think that's like a stance I can really get behind for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that may be, honestly, that may be the right posture to have. I don't really know. And I've been there before too. That's kind of been my position in the past, where we hope for that and pray for that consistently. But yeah, I think I moved away from that by way of certain arguments and certain really early sort of church father readings of the text too.
Yeah, I think
kind of persuaded me toward a kind of stronger position on that. But maybe I'm fine with saying maybe that is the right posture to take.
Yeah, I think some of your arguments, as far as like the I wish I knew that Greek word, but like the faithfulness of Christ and like the way that plays into things, like kind of leads more towards like your view though of like confidently saying you're a universalist, because like it's less about like a condition you have to meet in order to be saved. So that is where I think you get like stronger on your side, essentially, where you're just like not. It's just that we like it's I don't know. There's a lot to it, but I think I'm pretty confident that like the random atheist you find on Twitter is probably not going to hell. But as far as every person in the world, I don't know. That's basically my stance.
JB, you're still good. Don't worry about it.
Lucky Spartan.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
So, John,
go ahead, Ron. Yeah.
you have you studied? Yeah, I bet you have. Have you studied any of Karl Barth stuff?
I don't think he's ever read any Karl Barth.
I've got
I've
got the dogmatics over my shoulder right here.
Okay,
so always at hand. Yeah,
I assumed you probably had.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Barth, and for various reasons. But he's been quite helpful for my theological thinking.
I like Barth a lot.
Yeah.
From what I have read of him.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced of the universalism. My Christology does kind of lend itself to universalism because it's like the work of Christ is enough to affect that.
Yeah.
And the recreation of all creation.
Yeah.
And I can't reconcile that with some of the passages in the Bible that seems to be exclusive.
Right.
And but I think it's a fascinating conversation that I wish more Christians were able to have without freaking out.
Right. I wish that too.
Yeah. I'm actually finding though
that too.
The more I engage with like intellectual Christianity, like it actually is you're more able to have this conversation than I kind of realized at first.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of debatable whether or not Barth's actually committed to universalism, because he does reject a certain account of epikatastasis, right? So he's rejecting a certain sort of originist account of epikatastasis, but I don't think that means he, as I'm sure you would agree, I don't think that means he rejects universalism per se, and I think he has his own kind of approach.
I felt quite different. Well, the way he seemed to talk about it to me is he could see where universalism could be true, but it's not something he's going to build a dogma on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
That's kind of my approach. I can see an argument and some scripture for universalism, but it's one of those things. I like to talk about things I know in 4 different levels. Things I know that I know that I know. You know, Jesus is Lord.
Yeah, right.
Things I'm pretty certain of, things I'm not real certain of, but I kind of have an idea on, and things I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that Christianity still contains mystery.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and like, I don't know, the other night when we were talking with Pine Creek on Dry Apologist channel.
Who?
And we were talking about sort of Holy Saturday, right? The sort of time between the resurrection and the crucifixion and resurrection, and he kept talking about it as this like hole in Christianity, this like unsolvable kind of thing. And I'm like, dude, this is one of the most beautiful things about our faith, is like there's so much to discuss in that kind of space between the crucifixion and resurrection, that it's like it's just so open to fruitful discussion, and also recognition that like we're involved with the God who isn't sort of completely searchable from our vantage point, right? Like I think that's beautiful. I don't think it's a hole. I don't think it's a problem. It's just amazing, right? So yeah,
well, I would love to throw this one at you. This is kind of an idea that I come up with myself. I don't know if it's original. I doubt it, but so it is more or less a dogma or a doctrine that Jesus descended to hell.
Yeah,
that's not necessarily in the Bible. You can kind of support it. I believe it.
Yeah, it's creedal. Yeah.
And I had an interesting thought on that. Was okay. So God exists outside of time and space. It doesn't exist, or a day for him is like 1,000 hours. Is it possible that when Jesus went to hell, that he evangelized everyone who is, or has ever been? And then the great evangelist has evangelized everyone, and then you can arrive to a form of universalism.
Yeah. I'd like that. I think that's actually quite beautiful.
I mean, it's an interesting idea that that it's not necessarily heretical. It's not necessarily against scripture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something I would teach.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really good. I don't think I've come across that exactly in the way that you put it. So I think that's really, really interesting for sure. Yeah, I mean, I totally understand certain, going back to what you were saying, Ron, about certain texts that are sort of getting in the way of a sort of confident affirmation of universalism, right? I hear that totally. There are very sort of harsh texts that we find throughout the New Testament data that are, they're difficult. And I think, I don't know if you've read much of Gregory of Nyssa or not.
Not yet. I will.
Yeah, he would. So he has this sort of scheme of holding these. So you have the sort of universalist texts, right, that show up throughout, mostly in Paul, I think, Romans 5, Colossians 1. Various places. You have some in the Johannine literature too. You have some in the pastoral literature as well, right? The pastoral epistles, which actually was kind of surprising to me. But you've got this sort of spread of universalist data, but you also have the spread of sort of destruction and annihilation. Kind of, you've got worms devouring, right? You have ovens, you have all of this sort of imagery as well. He puts those kind of together and says it seems like the destruction and the harsher texts kind of come first. I think I was talking about this the other night, where you have this sort of destruction that's going on of the flesh and of our current sort of sinful bodies that we inhabit and sinful flesh that we inhabit, that happens first at the end of history. That's a judgment, that happens, right? And that's real, and it really is a destruction. There are certain parts of us that are destroyed and burned away, and then sort of after that, in the beyond all ages, right? This is where the final reconciliation of all things happens, where, as Colossians 1 says, you have tapanta, all things being drawn back to God, right? So I think his kind of schema is really attractive to me, because I think he's able to handle both sets of texts, both the universalist texts and also the destruction, kind of harsher judgment texts, right? And I haven't found a persuasive position the other way around, where there really is a destructive end for certain people. And then the question is, how do you handle the universalist stuff? Is this sort of hyperbole?
I think that's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a very good point. That's actually what I was thinking when you were talking. Is the universalists or the universal open people struggle with the annihilation text, but it doesn't seem there's a whole lot of annihilation or such that struggle with the universalist text. It is more Paul than it is.
It is more Paul than anyone else. Yeah.
That was a funny one I saw, or I ran across. I thought was interesting. Is Paul seems to get this reputation of being this hard charging, lay it down kind of guy, and then people think of that's Paul, and then they think of Jesus as this loving come to me guy. And it's like really the opposite way around in the text.
I think so too. Yeah.
I mean, I see that in Paul. I mean, I like Paul a lot, of course.
So do I.
I think studying Paul is amazing.
Agreed.
But, Ethan, you had something, didn't you?
Yeah, a couple things. I just want to say, hey, Craig Reed, the man, the myth, the legend, join the stream. So.
Hey guys,
Number one Christian YouTuber. Yes.
We'll see if my connection holds. Yesterday I was struggling, and
sounds good.
I can make really good arguments for Elf if we're still talking about that. Elf is the best Christmas movie.
Let's hear it.
Well, actually, there is a story behind Elf, because my wife and I have this tradition at Christmas where we go see a movie together while we're doing like mall shopping, things like that. And that started because of Elf, because she was bugging me to see it. And from the commercials, I was like, oh, I really don't want to see this stupid, corny Christmas movie. I was like, this looks so lame. And then we went to the mall and it was playing at the mall. So I was like, she was bugging me to see it, and I was going to duck out of it. And I was like, all right, Jennifer, look, Elf is here. So I went to see Elf, and we both loved it. So from that point forward, we made the tradition of seeing a movie every time, like every Christmas. We'll go to a Christmas movie.
Nice. Yeah, I saw last time I went to a movie on Christmas, we saw Hateful Eight, so that wasn't really a Christmas movie, but
yeah, we saw that too. Actually, we saw that at New Year's.
Nice.
That was I was actually disappointed in that. I mean, it's okay, but
I think we talked about this, Craig, on your channel, Hateful Eight, and that we both don't really like it that much. I think we did.
Yeah,
I actually liked
for
it
a Tarantino movie, it's decent, but it's not like. If I'd seen what was the one before it with the slave
Django
Unchained,
yeah. If I'd seen that in the movie theater, I would have been like, because I saw Pulp Fiction in the movie theater, and like I think we saw it 4 times total in the movie theater because it was just so fun to see like that.
Pulp Fiction's great no matter where you watch it.
Yeah, totally.
I think my favorite Tarantino movie is Reservoir Dogs.
That is JB, yeah.
Yeah, that is JB.
Right.
Hey, John. Can you look in the private chat for a second? I sent you something.
Reservoir Dogs is the best Tarantino movie.
Nice. Finally, someone who agrees. Yeah.
And everyone who disagrees is a heretic.
There you go. You can believe in universalism or eternal conscious torment, but if you don't think Reservoir Dogs is the best Tarantino movie, you're a heretic.
That and the divinity of Christ.
Oh, dude.
Mr. Pink and Mr. Orange.
Dude, I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is actually up there for me for Tarantino
Really?
stuff. Yeah, I love that movie.
I actually haven't seen that one, so maybe I shouldn't be making claims if I haven't seen them all.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen that one either.
Yeah, it's good. Craig's not so
we
sure.
saw it in the movie theater too. It might have been better. That's one that might have been better watching it at home, because a lot of times I have an easier time enjoying a movie if I'm watching it on Netflix or HBO or something.
This is where we need dry
Yeah.
apologists. Him and Craig are always going back and forth about movies.
Movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I've
my
gone back
favorite,
and forth on
my
movies.
favorite Tarantino is
Pretty
definitely Inglourious Bastards, though. I think that's top of the list for me. Although Pulp Fiction is kind of a classic, obviously at this point, but I don't know. We actually, speaking of Christmas time movies, we actually watch that around Christmas time every year. Yeah, I love it.
I think the token atheist was trying to say something, but
I'm just a token atheist. Nobody cares what I'm saying.
It's okay. Yeah, we care about you. We love you. Jesus loves you.
I'm background noise in this channel. That's all. So,
Ethan-
Spartan,
Yeah, go ahead.
I sent John a message a little bit ago and said, I said just so that I want you to know exactly what's going on. But John and I are now one step closer to our goal of taking over your channel. We are now
Yeah.
on your stream.
Oh, you sent
at
it
the
to
same
Twitter.
time.
No,
Did
I
you
sent
send
it
it
through the chat on Zoom.
Oh, I'm not seeing it.
Well, you know what it says now, so I don't know.
Yeah, I do.
You're gonna learn much new by reading it, but
We were one step closer. We were one step.
We're still
closer to our
trying.
goal
We're still
of taking
trying.
over this
It's
channel.
gonna happen, man.
yeah. I mean, you might as well wait till I at least get 1,000 subscribers.
You gotta plant the seeds early.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, almost every time I have John on my channel, I lose subscribers, so it's probably going down as we speak.
Yeah, that's what happened on my channel too. That happens.
Well, look,
People are like, oh my
look
god.
at his name. Just look at his name. Universal character. Let you know where he's coming right there.
I'm just bad luck, apparently.
I haven't lost any subs.
Why? What's with the name? They think it's a French atheist. Is that the?
No, on here.
He's talking about John's name, not
Yeah.
JB's.
John's got his name as Universal Heretic.
Yeah.
Oh! I didn't know that's what he was calling himself. I thought it was John. I thought it was you meant his last name. It's like, oh my god, a French atheist.
Yeah, those French
Who is this
people.
guy?
Jeez. Ethan, were you gonna say something about universalism? I think you were gonna chime in.
I don't know, just that I do think, the way you describe, the universalists being able to describe the annihilation text, accurately and not just saying they're hyperbole, but yet, if you're an annihilationist, then you have to essentially just say all the universalist texts are hyperbole is a very convincing argument.
Yeah, and I think to kind of add to that, a lot of the harsher kind of destructive texts are coming from parables a lot of the time. We're very image heavy texts, right? That are talking about fire and ovens and burning away, worms, that sort of Gehenna, the Valley of Hinnom, right? You have those sorts of imagery. But then the universal stuff seems sort of more straightforward accounts of what's going to happen. And there really isn't sort of the same kind of parabolic or image heavy kind of text. Yet a lot of people think that this stuff is really the center of what's going to happen ultimately. And then kind of say, oh, that's just hyperbole. Mm-hmm. That's always been kind of fascinating to me is how we've kind of treated and weighted that set of imagery over the sort of what I think is more straightforward statements, really. Yeah.
But one of the interesting things for me is I don't see Sheol in the Old Testament as being anything like what we think of classically as hell.
Exactly.
It seems.
Right. Yep.
It seems more like a holding place of soul.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. You're totally right. Yeah.
And it doesn't. Annihilation doesn't seem to be part of the Old Testament in my estimation.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. Sheol's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
And another thing that I find interesting about the idea of universalism, one, a lot of times I think it's misunderstood. It gets categorized as lazy theology, heretical stuff.
Yeah.
But and there's a degree in there that's being missed. I think it's fascinating to think about and to contemplate and discuss. I just can't confirm it necessarily.
Sure.
But what I think is fascinating about that is to have that conversation is to expose a person's heart, I think.
Yeah.
Because you can. Because what is, some people reject universalism out of hand because they're trying to protect something.
Yeah.
The rabbis were real big about building fences around theology, right? And that's how you get the oral Torah, which is written Torah.
Yep.
And we still do that. We still build fences around doctrines or theology, and in order to protect something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if universalism is a thing, or if it were, right, just to say it is, right, how does a believer feel about that concerning a non-believer, that they might be saved but they're a non-believer, or they're not laboring for the Lord, they're not putting in the work of the evangelist or the missionary or the teacher? How do you feel towards that? Because you should feel, I think, good, actually. It shouldn't change. It shouldn't change your. Does that change your desire to labor for the Lord, so to speak?
Well, because it does with a lot of people. Probably that's part of why people are internally resistant, because it's like, well, why am I doing all this if everybody's everyone's in on the good thing?
I think that's totally right. I think there's that sort of resistance of like, the question is like, this sort of exposes, as you were kind of saying, Ron, like the motivation of people in their sort of their evangelism or kind of witness to people, right? Is the motivation that you're going to go to heaven and get a reward, otherwise you're going to be screwed and go to hell forever, right? Or is the motivation purely for the sake of your love for God and your confidence in the truth about God? And if that's the case, and that's what's motivating it, that's going to make you a heck of a lot more accepting of the potential for everybody being drawn back into communion with God forever, right? If it's purely for the sake of loving God and God's love for you and wanting to share that with people, and for people to understand that, and to, as one of my friends, Jeff McSwain, says, wake up and smell the coffee, as it were, for people to understand that this is what's true and real.
Okay. Let me ask you a weird question based off of this, because a lot of atheists make a big part of their argument against Christianity is eternal conscious torment. And I don't know if this is something I'm just perceiving, if I'm perceiving this clearly, but it seems to me like some people would rather not believe in God than believe that God could sentence anybody to hell. Like, that's a really big, like, I can't believe in a God that would do that. So maybe if you do you actually try to preach universalism to people, or you just believe it? So like, you don't teach. Do you teach it in your because you're a pastor, right?
It depends on the text that I'm preaching from. If I'm preaching from a more universalist text, then I would have to kind of be honest about my exegesis of that. And
so do you guys understand what I'm asking? Do you think that would get rid of some of the resistance of some people? Does the question make sense? I'm not sure if I framed it right.
I think, like, he mentioned Jeff McSwain, and like hearing that guy talk and how he talks about like using universalism, and he's even like not a universalist, come to find out, but he basically is. He might like
he's a hopeful
but doing it in a way that's like evangelizing and talking to people like you are included already. Like you're in. now, realize it. Like you said, wake up and smell the coffee. So I think there really is some like power to that, and people to like realize that, and like it really puts some force behind it. It's almost like, to me, I see that like if somebody tells me like, okay, all you have to do is like repent and believe, and someone can just like, you know, it is what it is. Like, I don't know if I want to or whatever. And but like when he says something like that, like, you're in. I don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? Don't be wasting time. Like, Jesus already has you in. Jesus already died for you. Like, and I don't know. I think that's really powerful, especially hearing him talk. He's much better at talking than me, and you should check this guy out.
Yeah,
for sure.
Could potentially be. I'm just wondering if people, because I think that's like a real thing with some people. Like I saw when Rob Bell's like the ultimate wussy Christian when it comes to universalism. He was actually like literally trying to preach it, and I noticed in the chats people were talking that way. Like it's hard to really explain what they were saying, but it was like, you know, if that's actually how God was, then I'd be a Christian or something like that. Something that idea.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think, well, if you take people at their words, there are some people who have said that. All right. And I think the neat thing that universalism can solve is the problem of evil concerning a good God.
Yep.
To a degree.
Right. Yep.
At least in the end.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't need to. I'm not like a universalist in the sense that I think that everybody's in, but I'm a universalist in a sort of sense that, like, you know, you recognize that Paul was on his way to kill Christians when God sovereignly introduced himself to Paul. And Paul said, you know, I was shown mercy because I acted in ignorance, and God is no respecter of persons. So like a Hindu's on his deathbed, I don't see any reason why God wouldn't just show up and go, by the way, you want to live forever as a Christian? And then he's not going to go no, unless it's like JB. Just no, I object. You know?
I mean, JB is probably the one that isn't getting in.
I was about to ask. So, Craig, what do you think happens whenever I die?
When what?
When I die, what do you think happens when I die?
Well, I've tried to work this out in prayer. I think you should be punished, but a punishment more fitting of the crime would be like, you're my pool boy forever. You're like my son. Wow. No, I don't
think
Black
I don't, Hebrew Israelite on me and making me a slave.
I don't think that God is so vindictive that like people who just didn't know or just didn't believe are going to burn in hell. But I don't think it's necessarily solved. I think it can be solved the same way it was solved with Paul. You know, God showed up. He wasn't doing something good. He was doing something really evil. And God sovereignly introduced himself. And if he's going to do that for Paul, why wouldn't I think he'd do that for everybody, including someone like JB?
Yeah. Do you? Can I follow up on this? Do you, Craig, think that at the end of this age, God will do that for everybody and show up in judgment? That seems to be a clear.
At the name.
Oh, you're fine. To show Craig's full point.
What is it?
JB changed his name.
I think that's a great. I think that punishment fits the crime, JB. I know you're not happy about it. It's better than burning forever. That'd be a little too harsh.
Will you at least baptize me in the pool?
No, be like, JB, you missed the spot. You know, like wake up every morning, like, and you're like, how is that, Craig? Like,
get that net back out and take out those leaves.
Yeah, exactly.
Craig's gonna magically plant like a giant oak tree directly on top of his pool too.
Eventually, it would be clean, correct? I mean, you would think.
Yeah. What I was asking was. Maybe to put this a different way, it seems like we have certain judgment texts and judgment scenarios where God does show up. I'm thinking 1 Corinthians 3, where God does show up and confronts
punish
people,
the wicked.
but he shows up and as a refining fire,
right,
and burns away all of the fleshly stuff, all of the stuff that's getting in the way of our relationship with God for a certain set of people in that text. Although I do think that extends to all of humanity in some way. And burns away that so that our hopefully through that refining fire, our wills are oriented toward God, regardless of who we are.
That could be. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, outside of that being directly like me going into prayer one night and me like really convinced that you're right, you know, I just put it on. I don't really answer these questions for myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't go, this
is
what happens. I think of the different possible things based on the Bible and based on prayer and based on what I think God is really truly about. You know what I mean? I don't think that I know the direct answer.
Sure.
So,
maybe I could come at this a different way then, because this is also, I haven't brought this up in a while in my conversations about universalism, but I think it's also important, which is appealing to the sort of purposes of God from before the foundation of the world, which we get in texts like Ephesians 1, Colossians 1, Romans 9 through 11. We have this sort of electing purposes of God to create a family of people to live in perfection and fellowship forever with God. I don't think there's anyone sort of outside of that, in that those electing purposes. I think there's no reason to sort of qualify that God has created humanity and the cosmos to be with God.
Well, but what's the nature of evil, though? Because like you takes the question that this begs is somebody like Heinrich Himmler. Like I don't think God is going to sentence like middle people like JB to eternal damnation, if there's an eternal damnation. But somebody like the purely evil people are violate everything that is right and good, and maybe they are irreconcilable in the sense that they're truly evil.
I don't think there's anyone who's truly evil.
Yeah,
I don't think any human being is truly evil.
Yeah, I can't get on board with that at all. Like
from a Christian perspective, we have to say that there is something in every single created human being that is good, even if it's being covered by horrendous activity and horrendous acts of evil. I don't think that removes the goodness that everybody has.
Do you want me to really make John a heretic right now? We had a discussion yesterday, and Don told me he wasn't sure if Satan gets a universalist pass at the end of time.
Right.
But I think it's more to do with like John isn't sure, or neither am I. I don't want to just say John is. Yeah, John's the only one confused.
I think anybody's sure. I mean,
but no. But John doesn't even realize. Like, is Satan necessarily like a person in need of being saved, or is there something kind of more complicated going on? Like, is Satan more of like,
especially with the Pauline data? I think that Satan is sort of tied up in the sort of nexus of powers of sin, death, flesh, evil powers, rulers, authorities, all that sort of stuff. So it's hard to say within that kind of conversation if Satan's sort of an individual being. But there are other texts in the Bible that do definitely describe Satan as a fallen spiritual being.
Well, you said the other day you believe in spiritual warfare, right? So you believe even...
Yeah, of a certain... It depends on what you mean by that, but yeah. I would go with what Paul's doing. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Well, the thing, my understanding was Satan or any of the fallen angels wouldn't be saved because Jesus wasn't a representative of them. He was a representative of humanity. And I like what Bart does with that, in that there is the elected, it's Jesus, the elected man, Jesus and the himself. Elected God.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
And we are elected through Jesus.
Yes.
And so I don't think that Satan or any of the fallen angels could be saved because they're not. He didn't take their nature on. He only took on, in the incarnation, he only took on human nature.
That's a great point. And
and some of the other stuff that I kind of built up there was one of the things I do struggle with is if we're saying that there's eternal damnation. People's eternal souls are depending on our evangelism and our ability to evangelize. And that's one of the ways I arrived at that idea of Jesus in Sheol or hell evangelizing is, would God really leave eternal souls up to us? I don't know.
Stupid us.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And something else that...
you hear... What's that?
I think Ron was going to finish. I was cutting him off.
Oh no, you're good.
Okay.
Dude, Ron is the Pope of the
go
open
ahead.
stream. I told you guys.
Everybody just talks at the same time in an open stream.
It's hard, man.
Yeah.
You got to yield to the Pope of the open stream, which is Ron. And then
But something
It
I
does
want
lead
to
to
point
some
out.
weird-
I thought you were actually not going to say something. Okay, I'm going on mute. It's Craig's turn. It's Craig's turn.
This is how we take over the channel, John.
well, I've heard weird. It does lead to some weird things in people's minds. Like I've heard preachers say stuff like, this woman, I went to her deathbed and I was supposed to witness to her and she made hell and I didn't say what I was supposed to say. And I'm like, do you really think God would make it that like? I don't really care about that person that much, Right. I'm going to send in like somebody who's not even going to get the job done,
Right.
That's the part where you're kind of a little bit like, I don't know,
Yeah,
But
and I think
weird
there's just
questions
so
are just
many.
weird questions.
There's just so many things that like determine what we believe too. Like we even mentioned the other night about like that involuntary doxastic voluntarism or whatever. And just like, can we really choose what we believe or whatever? And I think some people just like, and I've always thought about this too. Like, say someone is presented with like this like really screwed up like prosperity gospel, and then they come to like read the Bible and like this is bullshit, and then become an atheist, and then that person like goes to hell. And even though when they hear like the actual gospel presented, they're like, their mind is already tainted by like not believing
it's so
it.
tied up in that stuff.
Yeah, so and it seems so odd that like that person wouldn't be saved for not believing, but then they really can't, like everything that enters their brain is like tainted by this like first understanding of like a false gospel. So that doesn't make any sense. And then there's like the people who live on like a random island or whatever, and then people are, they just like look at the trees and get saved or whatever, and that doesn't make any sense to me at all, because it seems like they're like better off than like someone like JB. That just, you know what I mean, like the JB screwed, but then this random person on an island who just looked at the trees and didn't believe is good. I don't know, it just breaks down. I just think it just breaks down to me.
You want me to give you the Saitan Bruggencade answer to that?
Sure.
It's they know.
He elected those people to live on that island for his glory, to not know about God's existence.
Yeah, and then that just leads to Trump being the next Jesus, essentially. Like, because America is like a Christian hub then, and then that's just really stupid.
John, you should have a discussion with a presuppositionalist.
What's that?
I said you should have a discussion with a presuppositionalist.
I don't think I could do it.
I want to see John debate James White on the like what Calvinism is.
That'd be pretty interesting.
That would
I
be.
want to see John debate Mr. Batman.
Oh man, I just don't think I could. I'm a very calm person, and
I mean, yeah.
I don't want my blood pressure to go through the roof.
I mean, you could legitimately debate Mr. Batman on like should Christians obey the Old Testament law or whatever.
Yeah, I could probably debate him on Torah because I think he's just straight up wrong. But
the best thing I loved about Mr. Batman was John sends in a question to Modern Day Debate, and he turns around and tries to explain the Bible to John like John doesn't understand what that text is talking about.
Tried to explain Greek words to me, which is always interesting when I've spent 4 years of my life doing that. Yeah.
Well, I think what we're talking about, for one, I think that's how you get. I can see how you start arriving at purgatory.
Yeah.
The idea of, or the doctrine of purgatory. And if I understand correctly, I can't remember, it's been a little while, but there's a slight difference between what the Roman Catholics would say about purgatory and the Orthodox would say.
Yep.
And I think the Orthodox is more of along the lines of something you kind of mentioned already, John, is that in this purgatory period, the evil or the not godly, holy, or whatever you want to call it, is getting burned away.
Yep.
It's a refining fire.
Yes.
And so I can see how that is. What's interesting about this whole conversation between all of us is it's a great exposure that, despite some of the worst kind of atheists out there, Christians do struggle with this. This idea of salvation and justice and saving.
The worst thing is when you debate an atheist on these, because a lot of times they were raised hardcore fundamentalists, and they try to tell you that you're not a Christian. You know, you that's fine that you think something like that, but that's not what Christianity is. And you're like, dude, it just doesn't work like that.
It's because they're presupposing a very sort of fundamentalist, hard biblicist kind of Christianity, and saying
right,
they're essentially
literally
agreeing with that and saying that that's what Christianity is. So they're telling you what Christianity is, and
but
any sort of thing that strays from that,
from another planet.
Yes. Yeah,
it's not it's not our fault if y'all change what Christianity is to fit your needs and just use that in a debate strategy.
Well,
that's not our problem.
What's the fault is that I don't think that I've answered these questions, but the atheist will not an atheist like JB, like a normal atheist, but they'll say like, well, that's not what the Bible says. That's great that you think that, but that's not what the Bible teaches, as if they're fundamentalists. And I'm like, it's one thing for a fundamentalist to tell me that because they actually believe it. But an atheist is just trying to win a fake argument. So you're like, dude, this debate is pointless.
Well, this is kind of a conversation that you can't really have unless you're doing it from a position, I think, of faith-seeking understanding.
Yeah, totally.
And keep in mind, in the grand scheme of the history of the Christian tradition, fundamentalism is very, very recent. This is a 20th century
and it's a reaction
arrival, right? So like for somebody to say that this is what Christianity is in its specific expression, in its literalist interpretation, this just came about very, very recently. There's a whole history prior to that. You have the Reformation, you have the Tudor Reformation, you have the medieval sort of expression of Christianity, of everything prior to that in the Eastern Church and the Syrian Church. Like, there's so much there prior to the arrival of fundamentalism that it's very bizarre that that's what's picked out as this is true Christianity, by Christians or by atheists. Like it's I don't know.
Hey, we just had a question in the chat.
Yeah.
We just had a question in the chat that said, does anyone here recognize heliocentrism or evolution theory as Satan's temptations?
For sure.
Yeah, Satan is,
flat Earth all the way.
Satan's using evolution to, to sway us away from God, and all of that. It's really bad. We should reject it and definitely not think critically about it.
So.
Well, you know that Satan came through and planted all the dinosaur bones in the ground. The dinosaurs never existed.
Right. There's going to be a debate about that tonight on Modern Day Debate.
that dude's going to get owned.
I know.
He's going up against Trevor Ballard to discuss.
I know.
Discuss dinosaurs.
He's going up against an actual paleontologist.
That's not the nicest guy when you get on.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
He's great as long as you stay on his good side, but once he gets annoyed with you, he starts to rage on you.
I'll be curious to see how this goes, because Trevor fairly recently had a stroke, and also we found out he has cancer as well. So I'm sure he'll be very different than his most public appearances on Joe Rogan, and all of that. But I'm sure we'll still see a public execution on Modern Day Debate.
Yeah, this guy did a debate on the same topic a couple of weeks ago, and
I know.
And Trevor was like, "Yeah, I could." He's like, "Yeah, this thing will be over in 5 minutes."
Yep.
Have any of you actually ever seen or have you ever, any of you ever seen an actual dinosaur bone? I mean,
I've seen one in Trevor Valley's background when he's done live streams.
I had some chicken earlier today, and I've got some bones.
True.
That's true.
I've got a bounce.
Chickens are dinosaurs.
Guys, but,
Okay, I appreciate you coming by. Yeah.
Congrats again, Ethan. Seriously, on your,
Appreciate
your
it.
subscribers, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that we could do a fun stream in place of your planned stream. But yeah, seriously,
Yeah.
I really
appreciate
dig
it.
you. You're a good dude. I'll see you later, and see
Appreciate it.
all y'all later. Really.
Zoe says bye.
Have a good one, John.
Oh, we saying goodnight.
No, just
John's leaving.
just John's leaving.
Oh, we kicked out John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we
Is
Is
no
he leaving or
Harry
we
Craig's
kick him
left.
out?
He's
Now,
leaving.
now that John's
Craig and I are
gone,
going to debate.
Yeah.
Oh, Craig and I
well,
are
now
gonna
that John's
debate.
gone, we can be fundamentalist again. So
True.
Yes,
we just
exactly.
we don't
Yeah.
have to put on an act.
You're going to hell, JB. No matter what John says, it's not a free ride, JB. You're gonna lie. You're gonna die. You're gonna fry.
There's a special place in hell for me. It's called the throne.
Oh, wow, that's hardcore. I'm convinced that there are some atheists who are atheists because they think it's cool, because they think it's like rebellious and like dangerous.
Hey,
For sure.
there's no ice water in hell, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, you know that I have discussions with people, man, and I try to get better understandings on everybody, man. So I'm not one of those people that just likes to sit back with my arms folded and say, "You're not going to budge me at all in position."
No, I know. There's a bunch of people who are like you, but there's also a whole school of people who are just, I don't even know what they're trying to accomplish because talking to them is pointless. They're just trying to score points. They're not really trying to, No, you're definitely
Zoe,
not one.
stop.
Not even close.
So what are we talking about now? The universal.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying. Exactly what I was thinking.
Well,
We can talk about how my dog won't stop barking, which is kind of annoying.
We talk about Clemson sucking.
well, in the chat on the YouTube, JB, you said you just met me. Actually, we had a bit of a Twitter conversation earlier.
Yeah, we did, but I
Yeah.
mean, like, I don't really know you that well. I was in
Yeah.
the stream. I popped in the stream for a little bit on Craig's channel last week. You were in there. It was me, you, Craig,
Yeah.
SJ, Dr. Josh. But I don't know much about you.
Yeah.
So I was like, I said, well, I just met him. I was like, but I don't think that's anything that he holds to, just based off the little bit I've seen of you. You haven't come in with this fundamentalist evolution doesn't
No,
exist.
I think
Like
that-
shoulder,
I couldn't
like,
help but laugh.
grudge.
I think it's hilarious, really. I mean, I understand some people take it very seriously, but I think it is pretty hilarious to think even that the Bible was a scientific book. I mean, I think there are places where it has been intersects with science, but it's not a scientific book.
Well, you all know that the Bible gets pi wrong, right? It doesn't give you the exact measurements of pi, so that just throws it out the window right
Yeah.
there.
I mean, it says bats are birds, so you might as well just throw the whole thing out the window.
You
Right.
guys are going to cause me to lose my faith.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Was it like bats
Nah,
are birds?
I'm one of the
and then,
good
like-
guys.
Yeah.
Now you seem. I mean, I've seen you on Twitter. I haven't seen you on a video or anything, but you seem much better than many.
Yeah, so
There's-
I did a stream. I did a stream with John yesterday, and was it Ross Burns like the day before? Hold on 1 second. My kids are calling me.
Yeah, JB's got a pretty good little channel started. He's a good dude.
That's one question. Can anyone offer a single piece of evidence for the globe model? Well, the ancient Greeks, I can't remember which one offhand, figured the circumference of the globe to such a great degree that it was only through the measurement of satellites that they got any more closer or accurate. And so that's ancient Greeks figuring out the circumference of the globe. So maybe that's evidence.
Sorry, y'all. I'm back. my kids. This is what you get forward to. This is what you get to look forward to here, Ethan.
Yeah, I know.
Kids popping up, interrupting your live streams. But no, I had a conversation. I can't remember if it was the one yesterday or the one the day before. But I said a lot of times what I do with interactions on Twitter is if somebody will put something out there that I disagree with, I'll try to throw like a thought-provoking question in there on it and just kind of pretty much leave it at that. Not try to be like confrontational with it or stuff like that. Just like, hey, this is another way to kind of look at it and how I kind of see it. So just how do you handle this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I see Jansen in the chat says Ron Skyler called and he wants to know if he can have his hat back. Yeah, he gave it up once he gave up his channel.
Yeah, Skyler.
They're supposed to start a zombie entertainment channel. I thought that was a great idea, but I don't see it starting. Or like a zombie movie, a general entertainment channel called Digital Fiction.
Yeah, I know he was like in the process of moving and stuff, so that probably has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Speaking of zombies, has anyone seen or heard Jonathan Pajot about zombie apocalypse?
I don't know if I've heard Jonathan's take, but I know John Vervaeke's. There's a book around that kind of metaphorically compares like why zombie apocalypse is so prominent right now. It's because it's metaphorically akin to what's going on in the world. Is that kind of what you mean? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, what it was is Jonathan Pajot had done a speech or presentation somewhere. I can't remember now. It's been a couple years now, but that's what it was about, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's really like it's nailing it, because zombie apocalyptic movies are actually all really big right now, but the zombie apocalypse is kind of like where we're at culturally. There are a lot of people who are going through the motions of life as if they're zombies, just like eating drugs, go to the club, sex. I think it's nailing. What's that?
People sitting across the dining table with faces in the phone.
Yeah.
Walking down the street and walking into a light pole, looking at their phone.
All right, y'all. I gotta run. I gotta get the kids some dinner. It's
you taking off?
7:30 over here. Yeah, I'm gonna take off, Greg.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming by. I don't know if we'll go too much longer.
I hit Spartan up kind of thing. I was just kind of bored. I was like, I got nothing to do tonight.
I had a different stream planned too, and that got canceled. So I was like, might as well do random.
All right, y'all take care.
Right.
Good to talk to you.
Have a good one.
Good to see you, Kurt. Have a good one.
See you, JB. That was my story. I was literally had nothing going on.
Yeah. Well, nice. I appreciate you coming by. Yeah. We were going to talk about open theism. One of my buddies did a debate a few days ago. We were going to do a debate.
He is an open theist, or he was debating?
No, he was debating an open theist.
Oh, the greatest thing, the most I know about open theists is I had a Twitter troll who always accused me of being an open theist at every moment.
Oh, that was what's her face? Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. That girl's
like every
wow.
Yeah, every conversation is like, well, that kind of sounds like you're an open theist. You're not an open theist, are you? You don't want to be an open theist. An open theist is a heretic.
Yeah.
That was like every conversation is like, well, you don't want to believe that, well, you'd be a heretic. No.
These guys him and Jay find a lot of heretic hunters out on Twitter. These people who are like really in the business of policing other people's faith walks based on, a tweet or two, like, and debating. It's a very, very strange phenomenon.
It's especially Jay Hansen. I mean, he tickles the religious spirit, so to speak.
Yeah, I haven't actually run into that too much. I don't know why, but
it's a different corner of the internet than where you guys.
Yeah.
because I think how that happens is Jansen and Ron, maybe Jansen more than Ron, tweet on, will make comments on relatively big Christian threads.
Okay. Yeah.
So they get to know people who are more on Twitter. They're not necessarily on Twitter like debating atheists, but they're on Twitter as like presenting a certain type of Christianity. I think. I don't know, Ron. What do you think it is? Am I right? That's just a sense I
have. Yeah, it's something like that. Well, Jansen, he's provocative, but he sometimes does it on purpose. But I think it's somehow we attract them, and they just, I don't know. I manage to attract some really weird people sometime, and they just jump all over it, and it's like, where'd you even come from? How'd you find me? But I think
go ahead.
I think it has to do with being charismatic. I mean, I think that's got a lot to do with it.
I mean, I retweeted some video Eric Metaxas put out today where he made like a parody of Mary Did You Know and changed it to Biden Did You Know and talked about freaking election conspiracy or whatever, election fraud. And so I was surprised nobody like came after me for that, because I just talked about how ridiculously stupid this was. But I don't know, that guy is a little dumb.
Well, Jansen has been in the chat. Why didn't he just come on the stream?
Yeah.
I don't think he's been in public yet, has he?
He's not really in position to do so. He's been in the chat.
Right. But I don't think he's ever actually gone on a stream and talked, I don't think, right?
No, I've tried to nudge him into it several times, but he's not in a good position right now to do that.
So that girl's a definite personality type. That's what I was trying to say in the it wouldn't surprise me if she lives out of her car, if she's like not completely functional. Because my wife and I knew a girl like that in out here, and there's usually a bunch of them at every church. They're really like busybodies and like destructive, but they come across as your friend up until a certain point, until they've gotten some form of like connection to you or intimacy with you, which means like power over you, and then that's when they start doing things to harm you. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, Ethan? Certain personality type.
That just goes after people because they have nothing better to do and like kind of aren't happy with themselves, basically. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Well, yeah, I mean that's usually the root of it. Sure, definitely. It's definitely that type of thing. There are probably a lot of people gravitate towards Twitter who are like that in general.
Yeah, Twitter's Twitter's really good, but then it is easy. Like, it's weird that like just anybody can literally jump into a random conversation. Yeah. So you'll be like 20 tweets into a thread, and they'll be like, "You're an idiot."
Right. Yeah, it's definitely weird. Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say it's definitely weird, but it's like, overall, it's been such a cool thing because like even this conversation right here all happened through Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Yeah,
it's Twitter is a strange animal because there's a lot of it that's just absolute dumpster fire, but there's a lot of it that is really edifying, and you meet great and wonderful people, and you have these groups that you can create, and then you've got these chats, and it's just, and then people are growing and coming closer to the Lord and understanding, or picking on each other's brains.
You have access to people that you would never have access to any other way, and like you can have conversations with people in real time who are like in Germany, and like I'm never want for company anymore. Like I'll wake up in the morning and I'll check some of these like chat groups I'm in. And it does actually feel like literally part of the family. Like, oh, I wonder what they're talking about today. You know what I mean? It was like, it reminds me of at college, there was the campus center hangout. And you, in between classes, you go to the campus center, and whoever stopped by, you'd hang out with them. You just be like, hey, how you doing? And it was fun. So it's very similar to that sometimes at its best. We've always got like a family around.
Yeah, for sure. I think overall Twitter's been a really, really good thing for sure. They're just, I mean, like with anything, there's good side and bad side.
Yeah, it largely depends on how you use it.
You use it, exactly. You gotta keep the bad side away from yourself. It's up to you to not get involved with trolls and feuds and things like that. Then it's all good.
And you're right too, though. It's wild when you start like meeting a lot of people and stuff, and then like you meet people in all kinds of time zones. So then you can find yourself being on your phone like at any point. There's somebody to talk to, which is a cool thing, but can also just be like probably need to get off my phone at this point.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that troll earlier is what's I do want to bring up is that person was very much like someone say like Pine Creek Doug with the street epistemology or the presuppositional argumentation style. It's like they've got their presuppositional position that they want to try to force you into, and all their questions are traps. And if you've got any experience with this stuff, it's like you can immediately smell it out. And then they're like, well, why are you being cagey? Why don't you just answer my questions? Because you're trying to trap me. I'm trying to figure out.
Because the question isn't a real question. It's like you're trying to maneuver me instead of having an actual conversation with me. Yeah. No, totally. She was exactly like that. That's all she did was ask loaded questions that were trying to lead you to give this. There's only a handful of answers.
And especially like on something like Twitter, or if you're like on a stream or something when someone's doing that, it's like a mess, because then you feel stupid when you gave a dumb answer or whatever, but they like led you into this random trap or whatever. So then it's just a mess. Like if you're having just a conversation with somebody, it's one thing, but like when like every answer actually matters and they're leading you into traps, it's like really feels bad and just kind of dumb.
Yeah, you can stumble into giving a bad answer, or an answer that you didn't really want to give, or you do the hesitation, especially in a live stream or in face-to-face. You do this hesitation, then they're all over you. Like, well, why don't you just answer the question? What are you scared, or are you just
right?
Not
well,
honest?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said with some of the Pine Creek Doug elaborate gotchas that he's worked out ahead of time. It's you lay it on a Christian while they're alive, and the person's hesitating. You even see the people in the comments play along with it. They're like, well, why is he hesitating? Because he knows it's a gotcha. He just doesn't know what. I know it's a trap, but I don't understand what the trap is, you know? So it's not really authentically producing anything other than a gotcha, you know? It's all it's doing. It's not actually demonstrating anything real or legitimate. It's just maneuvering somebody.
It specifically does not allow you. It does not allow you to just say what you want to say or to communicate.
Yeah, and I went on my buddies have a show that they call it the Atheist Roundtable, and I went on there and they did a lot of like street epistemology type stuff, and then you just have people in the comments like the first comment, that's probably the foundational error with Spartan's reasoning. Like, dude, you don't know me at all, and you're gonna sit here and say you understand the foundational error in my reasoning. Like, dude, come on. You know, it's like, maybe I did sound that way, but when you lead me down this path where I get like confused and then like don't know how to answer a question, because especially relating it to the 4 questions before, it's just a mess. Yeah, so I really just don't like street epistemology. Even though, like, I think it's okay. I think it's okay for a conversation, like, to challenge someone and make them, like, think about why they believe something. Like, I do think there's value there. I don't think it's good for, like, a live stream or, like, something like that where that's being recorded. Because then you just, like, are so scared of falling into any of those traps. And, like, yeah, that's where I think it goes wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely designed for like if it's a one-on-one conversation and it's being recorded and it's just a way of getting you to think about your reasons for believing certain things. Do you have a strong justification? Then it's actually really valuable, and it's a tool that you can even use on yourself. You know, why do I believe this? But when it's in the form of it's a live stream, then that's really a debate, and it's a really like not an honest way of debating somebody, because it's kind of underhanded in that context. Because you're just asking questions to gotcha somebody, set them up. You're not legitimately getting them to think about something in the moment. If that's your point of view, what was the question? Do you remember? If they had Spartan really hasn't thought this through, you just come right out and say, look, I don't really think you thought this through because X, Y, Z, PDQ. But then you can answer and rebut. And then that's why it's, you know what I mean? So, but it's so much more above ground, but it doesn't give the person who's asking the question as much power. So.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know if you guys saw this, but Pine Creek had a Twitter exchange with an apologist. I think today or earlier today. And at one point he said, well, he the guy's in the conversation, but Pine Creek's talking to someone else. And then he says, well, this guy has expressed that he's had mental problems and suicidal thoughts, but Jesus delivered it from him, so it's not safe to try and push him on his belief, kind of thing. And that was such an incredibly dishonest thing to do, because it's specifically designed to discredit the apologist, because it's he's so weak that he can't handle the truth, or we can't morally push him on it, so there's no reason to engage in discussion at all with him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the one thing to keep in mind is that if you're confident in your position, if you're actually really confident in your position, you don't need to, I'll have atheists on my channel for 2 hours and I never press them. Why do you believe X? Why do you not believe in God? I never do stuff like that, because I don't have to. I'm not in the business of trying to undermine somebody else ever. You know what I mean? That's a tell when atheists are doing that. Even when they're asking you, sometimes when I'm in a live chat watching something, there's 3 or 4 atheists who will just ask me these stupid questions. I'm like, dude, these questions are so stupid. And they think they're gotcha questions. Dude, you're just not thinking about it, So, but the fact that they feel defensive by asking these questions shows me something already. And it's not, I really 100% confident there is no God. It's I'm kind of challenging them just by being there, and I'm not trying to. That's how I see it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. It's I just think it's really I don't understand why more people don't want to have conversations like what we were doing with JB in here, just talking and stuff. It's so strange that some people just want to attack you. Immediately you'll be in an atheist channel or whatever, and you'll say something and my name Spartan Theology will pop up and do you know that Jesus doesn't even exist, and no one talks about him at all, and there's no reason at all to believe in God. It's dude, I was just commenting on the question that was asked, chill. And I agree, it's yeah,
it would be great if we could have more mature conversations, typically. And there are people out there like JB, he's our avatar for a moment, but there are people out there like him. And there are, bad Christians in that regard too. They're bad on both sides. Anyone who does it, you suck, stop. Yeah. But it's with, I think Braxton Hunter really does a pretty commendable job in most things. But he received some incredible hate too, and forgot where I was going with that.
Yeah, he does get a lot of hate for sure, which I like Braxton a lot.
Yeah,
that's why I was going to go with that. That's where I was going to go with that. Is you hear all the time, a lot of atheists will say, "Well, Christians or my Christian family are just pigeonholing me. I just became an atheist because I wanted to sin or whatever," and they're not. They always want to state their case, and they're not listening to anyone else. But that happens with a lot of people. That's not just atheists, of course. But what I get into, what really aggravates me so often, is I'll run across in random conversations like you were talking about, Ethan, there's nothing. I didn't bring nothing up, but they were like, "Oh, well, you just believe that because you were indoctrinated, or you just believe that because you were told." And it's like, you don't know me, and you don't know how I came to faith, and it's actually the exact opposite of what you just said. And then they won't let you. They won't believe it. They won't let you speak for yourself and believe it.
And to me, I think like a best way of like getting people interested in Christianity, and I'm not saying like evangelism doesn't have its place, but like, I mean, just having conversations like what we're having here is like something I think is really, really good. Like people can come in and just hear people talking and like, man, that sounds really interesting or whatever. You don't have to just like challenge someone's beliefs at every turn. Just like you're saying, like the bad Christians do, because I think a lot of Christians like feel like they just have to like attack atheist beliefs at any turn. Like that's the Christian thing to do, and I'm like, for me, like as soon as somebody did that, then you just put your defenses up, and you don't even want to hear it.
Yeah,
you can't
it's
hear anything.
counterproductive.
But like if you're just having a
Counterproductive.
conversation about cool aspects of theology or something, like how we were talking about universalism and stuff, like I think that's huge, and people can be like, man, that sounds really interesting or whatever. Maybe I just want to get involved. But yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree.
yeah. And
that's what I
Apocalypse
like
here
about
saying like, isn't that a
Chris.
kind of evangelism? And that's exactly what I'm saying. Like that's why I think it's really cool to like just show people that it can actually be really interesting and fun to be a Christian too, and like talking to people and there's something there. It's not just about like, all right, repent
And
and,
make sure they
believe,
feel heard.
and then you're done.
Right.
But and it has a lot to do with what your motivation of that. I mean, you can say evangelism's kind of a loaded term anymore, really. You know, it's like, well, you're just trying to trick me to evangelize me. You know, there's a lot of that concept to it. But it can be an evangelism tool, but you just got to be honest and straightforward. It's like, just, I want to have a conversation, and it's interesting, and I can maybe show you an aspect of Christianity that you didn't know exists.
Yeah, and I think something too that like I know for myself, like if I like before I was a Christian, like if I had a conversation with somebody, and even if like the Christian, like I felt like I like won the conversation, you know, even if it wasn't a debate, but like they couldn't answer my questions or whatever, it's still like I might walk away like, man, they really did make a few good points. Like maybe I was missing something too or whatever. You know, there's never like just a winner or a loser in a conversation. So I don't understand why we all have to like. Some people feel the need to turn everything into a debate and stuff too. It's just, yeah. Jansen
It's part of how things are.
yeah, Jansen left a pretty good comment. I gotta go fall into the woolly cotton arms of unconsciousness. It's a good way to say he's going to bed.
Yeah.
But you know,
Oh, this guy's
and,
back.
you know, Christians do this often. You know,
I gotta
they
use the
know-
bathroom.
know
I was
true-
trying to wait, but I can't, so I'll be right
Okay.
back.
the
Let's take over the
no
channel.
true
Let's do it.
no true Christian fallacy or charge for people who leave Christianity and become atheists. You know, that does happen, and it's not helpful. But also, but by the same account, you've got no true atheist claims being slung all around, because it's like I was an atheist, and then I've told people this on Twitter and discussions, and they're like, well, you weren't really an atheist, obviously, because now you believe. And I get say all that because I found a writing of mine from about 20 years ago. This was written by my own hand, and it's actually not cool. But it says, I asked myself, is there a God? And I really wrote this. First off, I don't know much as nobody else really does. Do I think there is a God? No. I really see no compelling evidence of a God. Would I like to believe there was a God, a supreme being controlling everything? To some degree, yes. Religion was formed out of ignorance. Ancient people didn't know how the world or nature worked, so they assumed God or gods were in control of everything. Modern man has since proven how many of these mysteries are made. I actually wrote that 20 years ago.
Wow, that could be like 50 people on Twitter right now.
Yeah.
If you tweeted that, and if you tweeted that as like, you know, Joe Atheist, nobody would think twice. Everybody would go, oh, there's a new atheist.
Yeah. But I've come a long way since. So it's not, I mean, I was a true atheist. I was a true new atheist, evidently, because that was been probably right around 2000, probably when I wrote that.
Can I ask a bit about your kind of journey from when you wrote that to where you are now? Like,
yeah,
can you kind of narrate that a little bit in whatever way you want to? Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a pinned tweet that goes somewhat into it, because what happened was I had a very, I wouldn't necessarily say they were a troll, but I had an atheist that was very much not totally aggressive, but they were constantly at me about trying to prove how I gain, basically questioning whether I was a real atheist and stuff like that, and how I can claim to know anything. Well, I wrote that thread largely in response to them, and that ended up being that got so frustrating that I ended up blocking them, because they didn't accept any of it. You know, it's like, well, yeah, they did that. It's like, well, you know, true atheists, and you can't actually know, and you're, you know, but my real, let's see, I would say that my journey essentially started with Jordan Peterson and the work that he started doing several years ago, and especially his biblical videos. And slightly preceding that is, I got married to a woman who already had 4 children. So I had 0 to 4 stepchildren in a moment. And there was a lot of problems. So I started actually getting really big into psychology, thinking I could solve these problems. And that's where I ended up finding Jordan Peterson, was following down psychology. And then he did his biblical series. And that actually changed my mind about the Bible being a serious text. And, you know, I thought I knew a lot about the Bible because I heard a lot of people talk about the Bible, but I didn't know anything, actually, because I never read it for myself. So Jordan got me to the point where I would take the Bible serious. And so I decided I should start reading the Bible. And then I thought, this was my thinking, was my wife and I grew up going to church, nominally at least. And so I at least knew something about the stories of the Bible. You could tell me, you could say Noah, and I'd be like, oh yeah, Noah, I know he built like a boat and stuff. But I started realizing our kids didn't even know any of that. I mean, they didn't know any of the stories at all. I mean, you couldn't make a single reference. So, and we were, you know, we also needed a community. My wife and I, we needed a supportive community. So I started reading the Bible, and I decided we should take them to church so they could at least get some sort of familiarity with these stories. And from there, when I read, you can stop me at any point, by the way. But when I started reading the Bible, what I wanted to try and do is read the Bible for itself, let it speak for itself. I mean, so I didn't have any religious background coming into it. I didn't have any religious traditions I brought to it, really, except for general Protestantism, being Protestant in this area. That's pretty much what you got. You got one small Catholic church. And other than that, I tried not to anyways. Of course, you can't get rid of all bias or presupposition, but I tried to take everything and throw it out the window and then read it for itself as much as I could. And it wasn't anything like I thought it was, for one. And then I came to Jonathan Pageau and his take on symbolism. And I realized that at the very least, the Bible was true in that it showed you a pattern of reality, or the pattern of reality. I thought it showed the symbolic pattern of reality. So at the very least, in that regard, it was true. I got convinced of that while reading it. And what was really interesting about reading it was I got into the psychology stuff real big, and reading Romans 5 and 6 was like reading psychology. It really was. And I was astounded by that. That was a big moment. I was like, Paul is like a psychologist now. But, when he's talking about you as a slave, you're going to be a slave to something. You're either a slave to this or a slave to that. Yeah. And that's largely true. That's, but then I started having spiritual encounters. I got convinced that the Bible was true, at least in the symbolic pattern of reality, symbolic sense. So then I accepted that the Bible was true. So I needed to understand the Bible. And if I didn't understand the Bible, then I was missing something. So I'm doing research and reading exegesis and symbology. And then I study history to see how much Christianity matched up with history, or its influence on Western society as a general whole. And also, that's another thing I found out, was a lot of the ethical and moral presuppositions that I saw were coming from the Bible already without my knowledge. I didn't realize it. A lot of the already ethical and moral presuppositions that I had were, because I was a humanist. I was always a humanist by way of, say, the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution was kind of my Bible. But and the ideals, of all men were created equal and all that. And I was a humanist. And then I realized, well, humanism, in my investigation, humanism comes from Christianity. It's like humanism is a godless Christianity. And so I'm seeing what I already believe explained. And so that's drawing me even further in. And then I study science as well as I can. And I realize that despite the fundamentalist atheist claim, science has not debunked Christianity or the Bible even.
Right.
And so that's the danger with those claims, right? That those all or nothing claims.
Yeah. I mean, that's not even what science is for, right? It's not for.
Yeah.
Its target is never sort of religious claims or accounts or even religious texts. That's not what it's for. It's never.
It's got nothing to say on it.
Yeah. Right.
And this one it becomes really fascinating. Is I start realizing, I see in the Bible this message that what we perceive as reality is actually sort of the hologram of the spiritual world. The spiritual world is more real than what we see as real.
Yeah.
And
yeah, totally.
And then I look into I'm getting this scientific theory of hologram theory or whatever, but I'm seeing that in Christianity, especially Orthodoxy, and the Bible, there's claim that what we perceive as reality, flesh and blood, is actually a parallel representation of the spiritual world, and it's like going along with this hologram theory, and it's blowing my mind and stuff.
Yeah.
And I try to get into a little bit of quantum mechanics, and that stuff starts getting wild, and some of it actually kind of points towards God too. But anyways, I found enough information to keep going. Kept finding enough truth that I could go further. And I was studying all these different areas, everything I could think of. I studied the history of the Bible, the passing of the Old Testament, or not the Old Testament, the New Testament. How does the New Testament come to us? Because I'm starting to put my faith in the Bible, and I'm like, well, how can I be sure the Bible is worth, that I have can be trusted? So I study that too, and it's pretty solid too. So I'm like, okay, I can keep going. And then I get to this wall because I'm following truth, right? I'm getting these truths, and it's leading me along, which is the irony of some claims. It's actually my dedication to truth and to explore it wherever it led me. That led me to Christ, which is the opposite of many claims. That it is possible. It's like if you question, you can't find. It will lead you out of religion.
Right.
But it was my dedication to the truth that led me into it. And then I get to this wall where my intellectualism is just stuck. But I've got this idea that there's more beyond where I'm at. But I can't get to it. I've hit a wall. I've come to the end of myself. And so then I finally pray, and it's like, Lord, I've got this knowledge and this wisdom or whatever, but it's not what I need. I need your understanding. I need your wisdom. Take everything I know and throw it away. I need your wisdom and understanding. And that's when I start having serious spiritual experiences, and the scripture opens up to me. I start seeing all these different levels, and for like a year and a half, I'm reading the Bible, and it's the only thing I really want to do is read the Bible, and it's literally like eating food. But anyways, that's the sort of kind of in this version.
Yeah, thank you. Seriously, that really beautiful and vulnerable narration of your kind of journey. I appreciate
for
that.
sure. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, it was kind of the same way for me as far as like when I first became a Christian, just got like obsessed with like learning theology and reading the Bible. And like once I found out that like theology, like for some reason before I was a Christian, I thought like theology was just essentially like solved and you just had to like learn it. But then I realized like, oh my gosh, this is like way more interesting than just like, you're not just learning things that are, it's not just like, here's the math book or whatever. You got, eventually you'll get to the end. Yeah. Like there's so many questions here that like haven't been answered in debates and stuff. It was just so cool, and I just like ate up everything, and it really haven't stopped since. But I know when I first became a Christian, I was like all about Reformed theology. That was my huge thing. I just thought like, oh my gosh, I already know the truth. I just need to memorize all this, and I got it. And then I realized like how ridiculously naive that was. Like, not that it's essentially wrong or anything like that, just that like thinking that you're like you
got it
right away. 2 months old Christian, and like you just got it. Like you just yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I had that misconception myself. I didn't grow up around a lot of people, a lot of churches or Christians that cared much for questions. And I think that's a horrible mistake that we often,
for sure,
some of us make. We can't have a discussion because it's like, well, it just is, or that's just how it is, or we're simply not being honest when we don't know.
Yeah, I know. I think like once I realized that there's like a huge group of Christians out there that do like questions, is when I really like, that's when I like took the next step and really just have, it's been really, really awesome. Yeah. Did we lose Craig? I know we still have Craig and John. They're just hiding.
They're just hiding.
No, I was listening. I like Ron's. I like Ron's testimony. I got cut out a couple of times, but
okay.
I was listening.
Yeah.
I didn't have much to add. I just wanted to hear the story. That's. I think that was a way a lot of people started becoming Christian through Jordan Peterson. Wait, what on earth is that? Hold on.
Yeah, there's been several. I mean, I certainly did, and London Theist Dean, he had sort of the same experience, and several people have kind of said that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Do we have? Yeah. We need. Maybe,
well, it addresses like.
Go ahead.
What's that?
Oh, there we go. Go ahead, Craig.
Well, it addresses like there's certain things, especially for people who were raised fundamentalist and who left because of that. There, he addresses questions of like the psychology of the Bible and the stories from how you can appreciate and understand what they're getting at without actually adopting any of the faith claims. And that's a big stumbling block for a lot of secular people. So he solves that stumbling block out of hand, and then people start appreciating the Bible. And that's the beginning of, I don't necessarily have to think Jonah was in the whale for 3 days to appreciate what's going on, the metaphorical truths in the stories. That's why I think he helped so much, because it was a way of stopping that counterproductive dialogue that we were talking about. It's either black or white, right or wrong.
Yeah, it's like, it's really easy to fall into the thing that, the Bible is just stupid fairy tales, myths, and he does a really good job of challenging that notion for you.
Right, because he addresses it from why these stories are important and why they have relevance and stood the test of time outside of the faith claims. So you don't have to believe the ontology to start appreciating what's going on there. And then once you start appreciating what's going on there, then you start looking at the symbolism, and you may actually start to find the ontology. So that's how I see it. It's like approaching it from the other direction, but it can easily bring a lot of people to the same path that you went.
Yeah. How'd you end up where you're at, Ethan?
Yeah, so for me, I was like basically agnostic. Just didn't like. It's weird because I think I always like believed in God. I guess the more I think back, I would always like find myself randomly praying. I grew up Catholic, but like we didn't take it seriously at all. Just like the everyday Easter, Christmas Catholics or whatever. And I stopped going to church completely, like in high school, and just like the people I hung out with and stuff with, those conversations like never came up at all. So so then like in college, like it definitely didn't come up. I went to Clemson and just kind of did the typical college experience, and I don't know if it was typical, probably wasn't, but I'm just gonna say that. And then I moved to Texas and met my now wife, who's a Christian, but she was like between churches and just didn't really have like a church she was going to, but always like wanted to find one. And she's got like, I was always like fine with going. I didn't have anything against it, but didn't really like see. I always like have been a very I hate saying this because it sounds like I'm like bragging, but it ends up being like more of a bad quality. But I'm a very like unselfish person. So like the idea I saw of Christianity was like a lot of people are Christians so they can get to heaven, and I just like saw that as like literal zero motivation. Like I'm just like, who am I to like get to heaven? Whatever. I don't really like. It seems odd. It just didn't motivate me at all. But then, like, we started going to a church, and I started hearing about, like, what Christianity really is, and more about, like, Jesus did these things for the whole world, and, like, just hearing this, like, the actual gospel presented just really got me interested. And then I just, like, it was, like, really quick, like, really hearing it, and it finally, like, hit me. And I was just basically would, like, go to Bible studies with her because she wanted to, and I was, like, sort of interested. Like now looking back, I really think it was like kind of like the Holy Spirit kind of just like just not letting that like negativity and skepticism really just like didn't really come up. I just kind of like, I'll find out, see what this is all about. And then all of a sudden one day it just like hit me, like I don't know, I just like was in a Bible study and I realized like this really is true, isn't it? Like that, like Jesus is like right here with us right now. I remember saying that, and it like gave me like chills. And ever since then, I've just kind of been like learning. My faith has like gone ups and downs and changed and went all over the place at this point. But it hasn't really like not really ups and downs as much as more just like lefts and rights, like just been all over the place. But yeah, I've just been like learning. So that was like probably 3.5 years ago. And yeah. don't know.
That'd be about the time I went through mine as well. I'm a late convert. You know, I was probably 38 whenever I converted. So I'm sort of late convert.
Craig Reed got kicked for some reason. He said got bounced out. I don't know exactly what that means.
Yeah, anything, John?
Yeah, I considered myself a late convert, given I'm only 30, and I would consider myself, sort of looking back, becoming a Christian when I was in college. So I wasn't raised in a particularly sort of religious home or anything. We went to church occasionally, and my grandparents are extremely Pentecostal. And so we would go to church with them on like holidays and stuff like that, which was good. But there was never, Christianity wasn't sort of central to the identity of my family growing up, is the way that I would put it. And then I went to college and was kind of struggling early on to kind of figure. I just, as you know, sort of late teens, early 20s identity crises happen, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know why I was at college. I just didn't have a sense of sort of direction, and I was taking classes and not doing well, and ended up taking a philosophy of religion course my second semester of my freshman year, and found out I really enjoyed that stuff. I really enjoyed reading philosophy, and sort of started realizing that I was actually good at writing as well. And so that kind of motivated me from the kind of the mentorship of my professor and sort of the encouragement of him to kind of pursue a degree in that. And I ended up taking a theology course, an intro to theology course the next semester, and I hadn't really been exposed to sort of the major figures in the Christian tradition, and really hadn't read much of the Bible, and all of that stuff was sort of involved in that course, obviously. And I really just ate it up. I loved it. I loved reading the scriptural text that we were reading, and reading the thinkers like Augustine and Aquinas, Gregory of Nyssa, Anselm, all these sort of earlier and medieval thinkers, right? And this idea of God taking on human flesh and dwelling among us and existing among us, and not, sort of similar to what Ethan was saying, not just in the past 2,000 years ago, but that this actually is something that's happening now, that Jesus is still present with us here through the Holy Spirit, and that God is with us in that way, was extremely powerful to me. And I'm like, it's hard to even narrate, because it's like something clicked, and I was like, yeah, this this seems true. I'm gonna kind of investigate this a bit more. I want to take more theology classes. I want to take more philosophy classes. Ended up sort of double majoring in those, and then toward the end of my college education, I started to sense a call to the ministry. And I was starting to come under the mentorship of some people at my college who were really involved in the church, and who sort of drew me in that way, and really were sort of introducing me to the really wonderful things about the church and about worshiping God together in a community. And so it was like, I like reading theology. I like this church stuff. Let's see what seminary is about. And so I ended up going to seminary and sort of working through this calling that I started to sense of being a church leader and being a pastor ultimately. And that's kind of how I found my way into this. And then this wasn't that long ago. This was like, 10 years ago was when all of this started. And now I'm on the pastoral staff at a church, and church is like my life now, and my work. So that's kind of how I came into it. Yeah.
You know, something you touched on there. It's so sad that we've become so easily contemptibly familiar with the idea of Jesus and the incarnation and the atonement and resurrection, and it's just so radical and so huge, or it's beyond words, but it's so radical and so interesting and so amazing. But we've got all this contemptible familiarity with it that we have to try and get people around and to deal with.
No question, man.
And it's utterly preposterous, really, to say that the creation God indwelled the flesh of a human being and came and performed miracles and was sacrificed for the atonement of sin, to bring everyone back to the Creator God and to free them from the trap of sin, or free them from the trap, period. And then rose from the dead and has invited us into his life. It's so preposterous and radical. That alone, like, helps it be true, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. Like,
it's the foolishness of the cross.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. Because
cross,
that's the thing, was my last hurdle, the very last hurdle I had was the resurrection.
Yeah.
Right. I was actually pretty much a believer, but I was still struggling. I was like, the resurrection though? I don't know, man. The resurrection. But that was something I eventually got past. But the resurrection, because Jesus is like the stumbling block. He's like, and it's so amazing how God uses the foolishness of the world to confound the wise. Because that's what I thought I was. I thought I was really smart and wise, and then he's blasted me on my butt and stuff.
It's just such a beautiful story that, like, I think the beauty of that, especially a God is sort of condescending to become one of us, to inhabit our created world with us, to be our brother and our friend, right? That's amazing, and also our Lord. That simultaneously, it's amazing. It's
how great of literature is it though that the creation God, the Lord God Almighty, condescended to be human. But not only that, he had followers, and then he stooped and washed their feet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean, that's an idea that's beyond anything that has ever been written, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. I'm about to get emotional talking about this. Like, it's so seriously, like, it's so powerful to me, and like so central to like now who I am, and like it's I don't know. But that's why I love talking about this stuff to do with God and to do with Jesus and theology. Because of what I see as that the power that's sort of in the right at the heart and center of the gospel, and I just want to witness to that. I want to be a good, faithful witness to that, and a good person to proclaim that truth in the way that I live, in the way that I speak, and how I relate to people. And that's really what I care about.
Something I think doesn't really get talked about just because there's not really opportunities and stuff, but like that really like hits me hard too is like the experience of like talking to someone like John or you, Ron, or random people you meet who are Christians, and like you can talk about this guy Jesus who lived 2,000 years ago, and you can tell like we're talking about the same person, and that like blows my mind that like you know the same guy I do, that like we both have never met before in reality, but like, and then I can read a book, like I got recommended this book by like this whatever, she was in like the 1800s in like France, this like Catholic mystic woman or whatever who wrote this diary, and like I'm reading it and it like blows my mind that she was also talking to the same person that we know, and like just that experience has like made it so real to me that like that's why like I don't, sometimes people talk about these like random arguments and stuff, I'm like, You can't convince me that this isn't true with like some philosophical argument, because like, how in the world am I talking to the same person as this lady wrote about 300 years ago, and then me and John are talking about the same person, and me and Ron, like, it just doesn't make any sense to me, and that convinces me almost stronger than just about anything else. It's just these like experiences of like you know what I mean? Like, I can talk about my buddy and I can tell that you've never met him. You know what I mean? But, like, but we talk about Jesus, and I'm like, wow, we're actually talking about the same person.
Yeah.
Travis is struggling with Zoom.
Well, it's interesting, John. I want to say, I know I'm pretty sure this is wrong, but for some reason I want to say you're Presbyterian. That's completely wrong, isn't it?
I was a part of the Presbyterian Church USA for a while, and then I'm in the United Church of Christ now. Still within the Reformed tradition. Kind of more broadly.
Well,
Congregationalist. Yeah.
You mentioned your family had the Pentecostalism.
My grandparents.
Members.
Yep.
Yeah, the grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I am now. Is I'm a Pentecostal.
Dude, I love Pentecostals. I love that tradition so much. There's so much there that's so wonderful that I think. Sorry to cut you off, but I have to show my appreciation of Pentecostalism, because I don't think I don't think Pentecostalism is represented very accurately by Christians who are kind of unfamiliar with it. Especially mainline Christians that are sort of in the denominations that I've been a part of, which tend to reject that sort of stuff. And I'm like, no, these gifts of the Spirit that are so central to somebody like Paul, for example, are present with us today. And we need to be willing and open to those things in our worship, in our life together now, right? And I think we miss out on that stuff to our peril, honestly, as a church.
Want to say hello, Travis. Thank you for
joining.
Hey. Yes, we can
Travis.
hear you. You're finally in.
Oh, okay. I hate Zoom. Like, I have the hardest time with Zoom. I was like, man, why couldn't you have just done StreamYard? But no. I'm glad to be here. I don't know exactly like where we're at, what we're doing. Like, I just noticed you were on, so I was like, hey.
We're just talking about Jesus, which is a good thing to talk about. Yeah.
Now that token atheist JB is out of here, we can actually talk about Jesus.
JB likes talking about Jesus too.
True.
You know what? I could give my testimony.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So I've been a Christian. It's been just like almost coming on 3.5 years now, and see, it would have been interesting, like, speaking with JB, because, like, you know, I grew up atheist. Like, I didn't believe in God, and I actually came to faith through apologetic ministry, mainly through like Hugh Ross and Reasons to Believe. And being a science student, what really kind of intrigued me, it was the fine tuning that, you know, like the laws of physics are so precise, you know, and it's like, why then, you know, I start thinking, you know, why is there something rather than nothing, you know, and so I started, like, you know, really looking at ministries like Reasons to Believe, Sentinel Apologetics. In fact, it was actually through Robert Rowe's ministry that I heard Hugh Ross. And so Rob and I kind of go back too, because like I first heard the Christian like message through his ministry and everything. And I was like, you know, this stuff, you know, it really checks out, and it's legit. And I finally, you know, it took a little bit of like really looking into it, you know, like various evidences. And I did it from more of like a scientific point of view. Like, I'm more of a fine tuning, you know, origin of the universe kind of guy. And, you know, just to see that, you know, there's a God out there that created the universe, then, that actually loves me. And then that's when I finally gave my heart to Christ, and I've kind of come to know him like personally. Like I felt his presence and his warmth and his love, and that's why I take up so much for Reformed epistemology. Is like I just felt that inner witness of the Holy Spirit, and like he reached out to me on a personal level, and it's man, I just like fell in love with who the person of Jesus Christ is, and just kind of went from there.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Also, it's nice to meet you, Travis. Kind of finally in person, not in person, but it's good to see your face, man. Yeah, we've corresponded a bit online, but.
Okay.
Something John brought up the other day, and I looked up the quote, and I'll just read it right here. Is that Karl Barth quote, and he says, "God may speak to us through Russian communism, a flute concert, a blossoming shrub, or a dead dog. We do well to listen to him if he really does."
That's right.
Yeah, and I looked at the quote, and I'm like, that's awesome. That's like somebody was like on Facebook today on one of the Facebook groups. Talking about, they're like a younger guy and all into apologetics, and talking about, man, I'm really struggling because there's all these like atheist channels and blogs that are like debunking all these arguments, and it's really making me struggle. And I was like, this is immediately where I went. I'm like, yeah, like these arguments and stuff are one thing, like you can, but like it's not what our faith is grounded in. Our faith is grounded in Jesus Christ, and that's it. Yeah. And I think that quote is really, really awesome.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to touch because I know John. I watched like from the you're not like a big fan of natural theology, right? Or you are?
No, but I'm a bit hard on certain accounts of natural theology, is what I would say, and not sort of. I'm not against the idea that God reveals God's self through the Holy Spirit and as mediated by Christ in other ways in the cosmos. I'm not against that. It's a specific sort of methodology of natural theology that I think can kind of distort the gospel, and I think it has historically. And there are some clear examples of that, but I think I've been I've come at this publicly a bit too aggressively, because I think there are some certain misunderstandings of what I'm saying, because what I'm not saying is that God can't actually do that in the world. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw like a little bit of the show y'all did the other day.
Yeah, the natural theology one. Yeah.
That's one of the places where I started to disagree with Bart a little bit more. Is his absolute rejection of natural theology.
Yeah, and part of what I was talking about in that video too was Bart actually later on in the Dogmatics in 4.3.1 has an account of natural theology. It's a very specific account. He calls it Parables of the Secular Kingdom, right? Where God can actually and does show up in various ways through the Spirit, in nature, in certain arguments, in your neighbor, in as Ethan said in his quote, a dead dog, through anything. That's true, and I think we need to hold on to that. My worry is when those arguments, when those sort of approaches aren't fundamentally controlled Christologically in the light of where God has revealed himself fundamentally. Yeah.
And I wanted to bring up a concern from the like other side, because here's the way I look at it. Like I believe that God exists because the evidence of like the contingency, the fine tuning for moral agents and everything is more. The universal applicability of mathematics is more probable given that God exists, and various arguments. So I believe that God exists, but I'm a Christian, because of who Jesus is. And that there's such a huge distinction there that to just like academically, you know, there's a creator out there. That's one thing, but I think it's something entirely else. Knowing who Jesus is and personally experiencing him, so I would be. I'm a little bit worried at like like extreme versions of foundationalism, because I'm actually involved, and I forgot to mention this, in homeless outreach here in Dallas, Texas.
Wonderful.
Like, and like we you know, we give we're like, you know, when we donate, we're like going to pray with you, and so we do a lot of outreach to the homeless. But then if you get something like strict foundationalism, you're going to have to say that those people you presented the gospel to, they're not rational in their belief because they don't have the resources to study philosophy, science.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
That due to evangelism is like, I have a concern with, like, if you take an overly foundation, like, you know, that's my concern, like from the opposite end.
Yeah. Are you concerned with my approach being foundationalist? Is that what you're suggesting, or just
no?
Okay.
It was like the opposite side of your approach.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Like how I came to faith. Like if you overdo it, like, you know, where it's predominantly arguments, then like,
okay.
What does that do for evangelism? Like the average person, because like the average person, like, you know, that I present the gospel to, doesn't have the time and resources to study apologetics and learn these arguments and philosophy and
exactly right.
Yeah, like would you like, according to that view, you'd be like better off giving these homeless people like a laptop with a charged battery than you would like helping them out. You know what I mean? And like that's just dumb. You're right. Like, here you can get on YouTube until this thing dies.
That's a fantastic insight, and I totally agree with that. And like, I mean, think about the early Christians in the communities that we have witnessed to in, let's say, the Pauline corpus with the Romans, the Corinthians, Thessalonians.
Yeah, they didn't know the contingency argument. They
did not. And what we know from something like the Corinthian correspondence is that people were confronted with the Holy Spirit, who were bringing Christ to them, and who the Spirit was the one who placed that confession of Jesus' lordship on their lips, right? And that was the power that came to them and that made them Christians and drawn into this community. It was as simple as that, right?
So I would be sort of like a reformed, like a reformed, or I even call it Holy Spirit epistemologist.
Awesome. I think that's. I agree with that. I think.
I use evidence, but I don't need any arguments. Like I have
right.
I know Christ personally. I mean, in the absence of any arguments, you know, I know I know Jesus, and that's really important. So, like, I'm totally on your side with that. Yeah. While at the same time, I do like the arguments, and I came to faith, but it's knowing Jesus.
Yeah.
I think I heard something Trent Doherty said one time, and he said that, like, do you know who that is, John? I'm curious. Okay, he's a philosopher. He's like he's all about reformed epistemology too. He's pretty cool. You actually probably would like him, but he said like the main goal of philosophy is essentially just to like shoot down bad thinking and bad arguments. And I think that's a really cool way to think about like these arguments, and because you also can't like just like completely let them go, you know, like, okay, there's no room for the contingency argument and stuff, because then there's just going to be a bunch of like atheists online making it seem like it is completely irrational even to consider a God exists. So that's like a really cool way to think about it, and that's what I like. And it's kind of like a way of like just putting that card back on the table. It's not like a reason to pick it up, but at least you're putting it on like you're kind of, that's the way I think about it. Like, this is reasonable because there's all these disagreements and stuff. Don't think it's a settled thing that like God can't exist. Like it's just stupid to think that or anything. But to think that like contingency argument proves God or the Kalam, like that's where I like lose it or whatever. Because like you're not irrational to not believe in God just because you like hear the Kalam or something. Like that's just totally ridiculous. Yeah. But I think I think that's a good way to think about it to me.
I totally agree with that. I think that theologian Sarah Coakley, who I believe is at Oxford now, she has this wonderful approach that we're it's fashionable nowadays, especially in certain sectors of theology, to simply look at arguments for God as just completely useless, as just we don't need to actually engage in that sort of stuff at all. Doesn't matter, right? That's not what I'm saying. I think there is a place for that. Especially, I mean, this is just what it means to be a contextual person, to contextualize to where somebody else is at. If somebody needs arguments in a certain kind of setting, and you feel like the arguments that you know and can communicate to them is going to be helpful, absolutely do that. There is a place for that. There really is, and historically, we know that. So yeah, I don't like the sort of there are certain people in kind of the Bardian camp that I'm involved in, who are really looked down on any sort of arguments for God, and I'm not willing to do that. I don't think that's fair. But I am concerned about sort of, as Travis, you were saying, foundationalism, and when natural theology sort of becomes a kind of foundationalism, where it's controlling, it's a kind of God.
Like I think
by what we discern from the cosmos, and then when we arrive at Christ, everything becomes dictated by those prior assumptions. There's no place for what Christ is revealing.
And what does it do for like evangelism? You know.
But I think also an issue too is like people who like really study these arguments and whatever, and then come to be like, well, because of this philosophical contingency, I'm a Unitarian open theist or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you start taking these like outlandish things that like you can like some people, they'll be like I don't want to put him down because I think he's probably really smart and really good guy, but I don't know if you're familiar with Ryan Mullins or whatever, but he's like all about like he rejects like almost every like sort of immutability, timelessness, like every single thing, like starts like coming because of this, and like if you think about it, like God knows what it's like to be horny or something, so he can't be like all knowing or whatever. I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, dude, you're like,
what the hell?
Yeah, he really did. Like, he talked to Shannon Q about this, and I'm like, this is so weird.
What were you gonna say, Ron?
I think I understand where Bart's coming from with his hardline casting off of natural theology. I think he's trying to protect his Christology or Christology in general. Which is important because like what we're saying here, I think you guys are saying, is natural theology can be revelations of God. Little r.
Yep.
And the Old Testament, you see revelations of God. Absolutely. I think you see progressive revelation of God. But Jesus is the revelation of God. So everything has to go through Jesus. To be properly a revelation of God.
Yes, right. That's exactly right.
And I fully get that. I fully support that. I like to say my Christology is up to 11.
Good. I think all Christians should have their Christology up to 11.
But I agree with what Travis is saying about natural theology or arguments from natural theology. I think I think it can be an important tool. And what you guys have also said is, like Paul says, I try to be all things to all people. And I think everyone has a place where they can be met, and we need
right. This has been really helpful to like sharpen up, and also kind of because I'm new to the YouTube stuff too, about how to communicate kind of where I'm coming from as well. This has been really, really helpful for sure.
I think it's great that God builds a toolbox. This is the way I see it. We all have our gifts, and together we can be that all things to all people. It's hard for one person to be all thing to all people. But that's why I wanted to add into that.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. Yeah.
We got a question in the chat for Travis over here, if you want to answer one. Yeah, this Irresistible Faith, I don't know if you're familiar with him. I know I see him in the Gospel Truth chats a lot and stuff, and he saw your debate the other day, and he said that, his is for you, Travis, he said, he believes God decrees all things, and he has libertarian free will. Can you expand on that? He's also a Calvinist, which you're not a Calvinist, but you're kind of a compatibilist, I guess.
No, I'm not
okay, actually, maybe you're not. Yeah.
It might be kind of good to hold to it. So I kind of take Robert Rowe's view on this. That I find it difficult at times to put God into these like labels, because I think God is bigger than Calvinism, Arminianism. But where do I see libertarian free will? Like a Molinist perspective, and see during the debate, like and this might have been a flaw because I'm using like a scientific representation to an audience that's like they don't know. Actually, probably doesn't know what string theory is and higher spatial dimensions and how they can overlap. And anyway, that let's say that we exist in length, width, height, and time. That's 4 dimensions. And that God transcends those 4 dimensions, and he can declare the end from the beginning while outside of those 4 dimensions. So everything within those 4 dimensions would still retain libertarian free will, while simultaneously sovereign decree can be like carried out. Or you could look at it as like a Molinist perspective that God has knowledge of all counterfactuals, and that he knows what this person is going to do based on this circumstance and can carry out his sovereign decree in that way. I think there are a number of ways. I use like a scientific representation, and I think a lot of people didn't really understand that. And then I also use things like I can like scientifically, I can prove that open theism is false simply by like the Big Bang, and that because time had a beginning at the moment of the Big Bang, and so the causal agent of the universe cannot be temporal, cannot experience temporal sequence, and kind of where I couldn't really go. Marlon wouldn't let me go like this scientific into it, but if that's the case, then God does not exist. Because the causal agent of the universe would have to be non-temporal. God could not experience like this temporal thing, and that's where I gave like the representation, like 2 higher spatial dimensions. Like he can transcend and be like immanent and transcendent. Sorry if I rambled on too much.
No. That's good. Yeah,
it's like really difficult.
Go ahead.
Can I ask a question about the libertarian free will specifically?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about that.
Do you hold to it, John?
No.
He makes it more complicated
I don't hold the libertarian free will specifically. What'd you say?
I said you make it more complicated than it needs to be.
It needs to be more complicated.
Or yeah, it already is too complicated, and you just make it even more, which it probably should be. But yeah.
Yeah. I would be curious about how you define libertarian free will. What would you say for that?
That we can like freely act within the 4 dimensions, like length, width, height, and time. That we have free choices. Now, where I think we're broken by our sin. So,
sure.
Like with that, lower it down to compatibilism. That's where we could kind of get into like a maybe, because we fell in Adam. We're broken by our sin. So how like free are the choices and everything? You know, that's a good philosophical question. I don't know. But it is possible that with God being both immanent and transcendent, see, he can transcend the universe, but he can also like interpenetrate the universe and speak to me like on a level I can understand.
Yeah. No question. I'm not concerned about that specifically. I totally agree with everything you've said. My question has specifically to do with that account of freedom of the will in terms of libertarianism, because I think libertarian free will is quite a late modern account, in the way that you described it too. What you described was essentially that we have the capacity to make choices, right?
Yes.
Does the why question, why do we choose things, come into that?
Why we do what we do? In other words, do we have
why do we choose?
Like outside influences?
It could be outside influences. Yeah, could be an internal desire to choose something.
Yes.
So does the why play any sort of factor in your account of freedom?
That's a really difficult question, because that's why it's so hard for me to put these labels. Like Marlon jokes with me that I'm on the verge of being a Calvinist, and then he loves to joke with me about that. Like, do I see? So like even what I said with like God issuing a sovereign decree outside of our four dimensions. Well, that. Like, would that be a form of compatibilism, or would it be a form of Molinism? It's a really fine line. I think.
It seems like the classical theist position would definitely say, we have a freedom of the will, but it's a rational freedom that we have. And by that, somebody like Thomas Aquinas would say, the freedom of our will is when it's oriented toward the good. Right? So that's the why question. Why do we have free will? It's to be oriented toward the good. So we are free in that orientation, right? So that's freedom of the will. Anything that's sort of pushing up against that or contradicting that, or some sort of attempted alternative option to that, is not free. It's an attempted replacement to that, right? So it's not that we have a bunch of alternatives to choose from. One of them is truly free. One of them, and that's orientation toward the good, right? So that's what I think is the rational freedom.
Can I add something when you're done? Yeah, I think, because I've heard you explain this, and it really like kind of hits home for me. So like an analogy I think that like helps us make more sense is like, are you more free, like say like I think it's easier to think about like a dog, just because there's like less going on or whatever, but like, is your dog more free if you like place them in like the middle of a highway with no fence around it at all, where like everywhere they go they're probably gonna get hit by a car or whatever, like it is horrible, but there's like they have all these choices. They can go wherever they want. They can keep running forever, however long they want. Or are they more free when you like put them in a dog park where they can run around and have fun? You know what I mean? So like you can actually be more free with less options, for sure. Like, and it's a whole idea of like, even if you're like a libertarian politically or whatever, you're not necessarily an anarchist. You know what I mean? Like, there still are laws that can make you more free than no laws. And I think, and then I also think, like, I think about God's free will. Like, God really only has one choice to make. He doesn't really, like, consider multiple options. He's not like, am I going to be terrible to this person, or am I going to be good? Like, he's good. There's really only the best choice. So like,
it's the choice.
Yeah,
for God.
That's freedom.
That's what's free.
Is being able to make the choice. That is
another way to put this. Actually, is in terms of this might be a bit tricky, but you have a lunatic who wants to run into a fiery building. So this is David Bentley Hart's kind of illustration for this. a lunatic who wants to run into a building that's on fire because he wants to know what it feels like to burn. He just wants to know what it feels like, right? Any sane person, right, wouldn't do that. That's not an option for them, right? So a lunatic actually has more options available to them.
But is he really more
None
free?
of them. Are we actually saying that they're more free? Or are we saying that the constrained amount of options oriented toward the good is what's free? Yeah. So that's kind of my pushback.
Well,
Yeah, I think there.
Ron was gonna jump in.
Yeah,
real quick. Sorry, Travis. Yeah.
I do lean a lot more towards affirming libertarian free will myself, and I'm quite sympathetic to Molinism. I don't think I'm not anywhere near open theism or whatnot.
I think we can all agree on that.
Do we live as though we have free will? Do we experience the world as though we have free will? Or do you not? I mean, do you actually experience the world as though you do not have free will? Do you not say, well, I think I'll do this now, or I think I won't do that now? I mean, we do experience the world as free will. But I think we do.
I love it.
And I think that's a strong argument. And well, you've also got, as far as determinism, you've got the when David was in, I can't remember the town, but David goes to the town and then he asks God, will they turn me over to Saul? And then God says, yes, they will turn you over to Saul. But then David leaves, and what that prophecy was didn't come to pass because David made a choice. But so I'm more into the free will, libertarian free will end. But here's my thing. Here's another thing on it, though, is we're made in the image of God. That's acceptable. God certainly has absolute free will. I mean, nobody can make God do what within his character.
Right.
Okay. God can do what he wants, but his character, of course, determines what he does. But it is my understanding of God's sovereignty is that he gave us choice. He allowed us choice, because that's how I understand it. Is because I don't think you can have love without choice.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make someone. I mean, someone can't be forced to love.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
That's why I wanted to end.
I think I'm rejecting a specific account of libertarian free will then. Because, like you were saying, Ron, the God's freedom is in accordance with God's nature and who God is, and his goodness and his love. So that's God's freedom, right? That doesn't sound like libertarian free will in the late modern sense, where you have a sort of unlimited amount of options to choose from. And it's simply the volition of those options that's truly free. So I think I'm rejecting something slightly different than your concern, and also I think probably from Travis's concern about libertarian free will. I think because I like free will and I affirm it strongly. I just think it's a rational freedom that we're given, and that's oriented toward the good that is God.
Well, let me hasten to say real quick before anything gets too far out, but I do affirm that we can only come to know Jesus Christ as Lord through the already working of this Holy Spirit. It is only through the indwelling, or the work, not the necessarily indwelling, but it's only through the work of the Holy Spirit upon us that we come to actually know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, as Lord of all creation.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm actually...
go ahead.
I'm actually like a 2.5 point Calvinist kind of. I'm not entirely off, completely away from Calvinism or Reformed theology.
Right.
I just can't. Frankly, there's 2 points that I can't confirm. I can't confirm I cannot confirm total depravity, and I cannot confirm limited atonement. That's the two I can't confirm. And
as defined by Calvin, I agree with you on that.
yeah, in the tulip, as
so
classically
strongly,
divine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about limited atonement. It's limited to everybody.
Right.
Oh, is the screen all black?
Whosoever
Did I
will.
Oh, I messed up.
No, my screen's not black.
It is
I
on
can-
YouTube. I fixed
Oh,
it
it
now
is
though.
on YouTube. Yeah.
Did God
I
have
tried
definite
to
foreknowledge?
be cool and show my screen. I shared my screen with my cool picture or whatever, and it turned everything black.
No, he didn't, Travis. Sorry.
Yeah, I was trying to show.
That to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
What I was
God's
gonna
trying to
say
shut
though,
down
it's
your
really
screen.
wild how like when you have like a chill, long conversation like this, how like people who in like a debate format or like if we laid out, we would think we all like highly disagree on like so many things, but like we really don't in the end. Like we're very like the important points really are like the foundation of all our beliefs, and it just how you suss out those things like is complicated, and like yeah, it gets different or whatever, but like we really don't disagree in the end that much.
It
Well,
almost.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it almost reminds me of like when I sat down with my friend Ben Watkins, and we had such a healthy discussion. He's an atheist, and he finds certain arguments compelling, like fine tuning for a moral arena, a little bit on the contingency. He even thinks there's some strength to say the moral argument, like I like the C.S. Lewis version, but some who is dissatisfied with like the theodicies that like modern our theodicies, like for like the problem of evil, divine hiddenness, is just not satisfied there. And so it was like really healthy, I think, to talk about this. And I think so areas like that, it's really good to just like sit down and explore, because like when you're in a debate, it's like you want to score points, you want to try and make the other guy look dumb, and it's just so much more productive to talk and like I think.
Well, I think I agree, and I don't know if you guys know these types of people. There's the heresy hunters that run around all over the internet, and they drive me crazy, but because they want to make heresy out of like disagreement, and
Right.
but
Right.
heresy is a very specific thing, and
Yes.
if you're saying Jesus Christ is God incarnate and Lord and Savior of all, then you're not likely to be a heretic.
Right.
But what's so weird about this conversation is so great, but these conversations are so great, is I am a Pentecostal and I am a charismatic.
Yeah.
And but I am also a seriously striving biblical understanding Christian. But I get so often I get these interactions with reformed theology people, and they just come at me so hard, and it's like they're trying to just push me into a heretic box, and it's like I'm not. I actually agree with you a lot, but you're coming at me so hard. It's like we're not going to have a conversation.
For sure.
Yeah, that's where I think these kind of discussions, like when John kind of pressed me on, like, well, what do you mean by free will? And I'm like, let me I actually need to think. That's a darn good question.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I think with
All right,
that we probably
friends.
do need to end this at some point.
Yeah,
I've been
I'm gonna
streaming
go-
for 2 hours and 45 minutes at this point, and I need to use the
I'm gonna
bathroom
go watch
again.
this hilarious.
Yeah, and there's a dinosaur
on-
debate starting, so it's perfect
Oh,
time.
okay.
Everybody should go watch Modern Day
It's gonna be
Debate.
amazing.
Yeah, and watch this moron who thinks dinosaurs didn't exist get destroyed. Well, yeah,
gonna be
thanks
wild,
everybody for
guys.
watching. This was awesome. I'll definitely need to do
Yeah.
more open streams like this because this was really fun.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats again,
I'm surprised
Ethan.
we still got 5 people.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, thank you.
250 subscribers.
Yeah,
dude.
250 subs. Let's go.
Yeah.
Next
Heck
stop,
yeah.
1 million.
Don't forget that. Yeah.
Yeah.